Board. Yeah, not to the cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome to the November 2024 meeting of the Board of the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Commissioners. I call to order the meeting at 6:30 PM. This meeting is being recorded. We'll go straight to opening remarks. I do have a request for an update. Pete, I was wondering if you could just, if you had any remarks on the crew's response to the hurricanes and I'm assuming they came back safely. And then there were some small fires locally in Salem and Middleton. And I was just wondering if
Yeah, so on
there were any impacts.
on the hurricanes, we sent the crew down after Helene. They ended up in Georgia. They were there for about 10 days. The county that they were originally dispatched to did not take major damage, but so they were rerouted to another county and they spent most of their time at that location. So they were there a total of 10 days and they came back safely. Right as that was ending, obviously Milton came through and Central Florida, the Orlando area requested crews. They didn't take as much damage, but that crew, so we sent a separate crew down to that event and that crew stayed there for about a week. So, and they both did an amazing job and so they were very appreciative. Obviously, the further north into North Carolina, so NEPA as a whole sent 7 teams down.
Wow.
So the first group that our original linemen were with were part of a team of eight different utilities. And there was 7 teams of those total that went and responded to the storms in Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. So it was a good example of the system working. Dave and I were actually in Denver for an ESCC meeting that Electric Council, and we were actually we were on all the calls that were going on at that level with Department of Energy, the White House, all the major utilities that were responding. There was a series of calls that went on for those 2.5, 3 weeks. And while we were in Denver, President Biden actually joined the call.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool. So that was pretty interesting. It was kind of cool because we were in the middle of the call and then all of a sudden some woman comes on and says, please hold for the president, and he joined.
Oh.
So it was kind of neat. So that effort was managed very effectively. Obviously, there's places in North Carolina that saw so much water that literally one of the things that they talked about was that there was a river that got so flooded with debris, it relocated the river almost a quarter mile. And the new path of the river is a quarter mile inland, just around Asheville, North Carolina. And as part of that, it took out 2 full substations. Like picture, Wakefield Ave being washed away, and 2 of those.
Wow.
It was, so that part was, some major damage there. So obviously within 10 days of each event, all customers that could be restored were restored, but there were a lot of customers that couldn't be restored due to the fact that a house didn't exist anymore or there was such major damage. So.
In some places, they couldn't accept any more help because they didn't have housing or food.
Yeah.
So they did the best they could. I mean, still had a lot of people, but they couldn't take any additional people.
Right. Our Georgia crew offered to go to North Carolina and they were full. They couldn't house any more crews in that area.
Well, please extend my thanks for those crews for taking time to go down and doing the work. It's appreciated.
Thank you. And the small wildfires in the area where there's any impact?
We didn't have any major impacts here other than a couple of days we did delay start a little bit because the mornings were really bad with the smoke. 2 or 3 days, I think it was last week. We delayed we called the guys in for about an hour just because the air quality was so bad. As the mornings wore on each day, it seemed the wind shifted or whatever, but it seemed to get better. But I think it was might have been Monday and Wednesday morning last week. I think that was pretty bad. In terms of any damage from the stuff that was over on the Saugus side,
Mhm.
well, we didn't really see anything. We didn't have any operational impacts.
Okay.
With that said, I'm thinking especially the Farm Street substation, how much of risk is fire? Do we have mitigations in place for and plans?
I think what we would end up doing there is manning it and, you know, probably bringing in a water truck to, but I think where that one sits physically and where Wallace sits physically, we're not completely surrounded. Fortunately, but I would say the BB substation probably has a little more risk because Wallace has the highway behind it and, you know.
Yeah.
But it is right off of Farm Street too, so most of the risk would be up the hill behind it, so.
And there's a hydrant right there,
Yeah.
it's on the Saugus side of the station.
Yeah.
But there's a fire hydrant like right at the back gate of the substation too.
Do we have plans set up with the fire department or like, I'm assuming they have that as a, you know, high priority asset that needs to be potentially protected?
Right, yeah. Yeah, we haven't spoken to them with all the wildfires going on right now. I haven't talked to them, but I mean, we do have the area around the substation clear.
Okay.
We clear about 15 feet around the fence, the perimeter. And then we do that every year. We just maintain that. And then that hydrant is right there. The fire department has been up there a couple times just to see the substation too. So if we get into a situation where there's, you know, fire in the area, you know, they monitor it. So I've talked to them about, you know, if there's strange cars parked there, you know, call us, the police. So they're very involved. So
We've also met with them about the fact that station has a battery now. So
yes, yeah.
different protocol.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're more involved.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I have one small administrative request. It appears that the meeting agenda was sent to the town before I had a chance to finalize it. So I was just wondering if I could have like 24 hours to review it before it gets posted. Do you know when?
I think I had given it about 24, but I had to get it up on, once it's posted, I can modify it a lot easier than not getting it posted. So-
Okay,
So I think this one took into account the changes that you made.
it did.
So the original, as long as it's,
Sir, when does it need to be posted?
a minimum, I try to get it in a minimum a week before, so that,
Okay,
but you can edit it after it's been posted. You can't just start from scratch posting it within 72 hours.
Yeah, I think it's 72
Yeah.
business hours of
Yeah.
the meeting,
oh, okay,
so.
all right, well,
But we put the board book to bed on Thursday night, Friday morning. so
Yes.
it really needs to be a couple days before that. so.
right. So if there's any way you could send it to me so that I have 24 hours notice, that would be, then I would have a chance to review it. Do you have any?
I was just gonna ask about the minutes.
Oh. Well, let me
Oh,
just see.
sorry.
Are there any other, so commissioners' reports?
Yeah, I know there was a time, I think it was a couple of years ago, we were talking about, I think when Phil was here, maybe, we were talking about making a real effort, having you guys make a real effort to get the minutes to us sooner. And I think you were doing it for a while, but now we're back to like, it's like 3 or 4 weeks until we get the minutes. I'm just wondering if we could get them sooner.
Okay,
I'd rather get them a little quicker, you know, sooner after the meeting. Cause then I started reading, I'm like, wait, wasn't this like 2 meetings ago or something? Like, yeah, I'd rather just get it sooner than later.
all right.
Okay. Are there any other commissioners' reports? If not,
Yeah, I have two.
okay,
One is just a quick update that the Massachusetts Light Commissioners Associations had their fall webinar in October. There is a video of that meeting, so if anybody of that presentation, which was on geothermal, so if you didn't get it and you want it for any reason, let me know. I can get it out to you. And then There've been two meetings, which I think I updated you all on the last board meeting, meetings of the interagency rate working group. And tonight's agenda is probably too full to give any updates on that because it's a lot of material, but I would maybe a future board meeting, we could actually like talk about what's been going on there because there's quite a bit that's been going on.
Okay. I would like a link to that geothermal presentation. I wasn't able to attend.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind too, please.
And Pete, I think you mentioned at the last meeting that the MWEC was also kind of monitoring that interagency working group.
Yeah, Zoe and I think Kate.
Also, Kate, for sure.
Okay, I'll make a note of that for a future agenda item. Anything else?
I don't have anything.
If not, we'll just go to the secretary's report.
Sure. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, town council liaison's not here tonight and doesn't look like we have any members of the public, so, all right, go ahead.
Are there any edits to the October 2nd meeting minutes that are not already in our board book?
On page 9, I have an edit. There's a couple of spelling mistakes. I won't bother with them, but page 9, it says Pete said that we are now at 7/1000th of a dollar of a cent. So it's really 7/1000ths of a dollar, not of a cent.
Yeah.
So we just scratch of a cent.
Yep.
I had nothing else.
Was that the only one, Jack?
Yeah, I don't care about
Okay.
the spelling mistakes.
Other edits or amendments?
Mine were reflected.
Okay. All right.
So
Then I will make a motion to accept the minutes from October 2nd, 2024.
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay. So next on the agenda, we have, well, thank you, Tom. Presentation of the fiscal year 2024 audit by Kyle Connors from Markham.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us. My name is Kyle Connors. I'm the partner from Markham working on this engagement alongside with my colleague Andrew Remus. I just want to start by thanking Mark and company for the responsiveness, getting us everything we needed to get the audit done to the point where it is right now. And also certainly for the grace and, this is Andrew and my first time working with you guys. So we probably had some questions that the prior team had better history of. So I think the transition was relatively seamless, and just wanted to thank Mark for everything. And Andrew's going to walk you through the audit.
So we audited the financial statements for the department for the year ended June 30, 2024. The scope of our audit is to express an opinion as to whether the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with US GAAP. It's we provide a reasonable level of assurance. It's not absolute, so there is some level of judgment involved. We expect to issue an unmodified or clean opinion. Kind of the one item that we are waiting on is the final pension reports from the town. But if we get those, then we expect to have a clean opinion. We also did not have any management letter comments or internal control deficiencies identified. So overall, clean audit, no issues. Just to run through some of the required communications that we need to make. Our responsibilities under auditing standards is to provide a reasonable level of assurance based on test of transactions from your underlying financial data. There was also no significant changes in accounting policies in 2024 compared to the prior year. We did not have any disagreements with management or have any difficulties performing the audit. Nothing came up that would impair our independence. And then we are not aware of any consultations that management had with other accountants, such as like opinion shopping or getting a second opinion on a matter. Some brief financial highlights looking at FY24 compared to the prior year, and a couple things that I wanted to point out. The first is kind of the improved liquidity of the department in 2024 compared to the prior year. From talking with Mark, this was one of your key goals for the year. And I think looking at the financial position of the department in 2024 compared to the prior year, you'll see that there was a pretty substantial improvement. So the first thing I wanted to point out is the current ratio, which is measures your liquidity, and it's calculated as current assets divided by current liabilities. And in 2024, the ratio was 1.8. So that essentially means that with your current assets, you could pay off all of your current liabilities 1.8 times over. A general rule of thumb for this ratio is anything over 2 is extremely healthy. So while you're not at that level, this ratio did increase from just about 1 in the prior year to almost 2. The next ratio I wanted to point out is a modified cash ratio, which is your current assets less inventory and accounts payable. So essentially your extremely liquid current assets after paying your liabilities, and looking at that in relation to monthly operating expenses. So essentially, if you were to not collect any cash for the month, how would you be able to pay your bills? This ratio increased pretty substantially from the prior year. So last year it was a ratio of 0.7, which means you could meet approximately 3 weeks or so of your routine monthly operating expenses, and this increased to 3.2. So you could meet, 3 months of operating expenses without collecting any cash from customers. The next item is unrestricted net position, which is essentially the net balance after subtracting out all of the liabilities and items that are set aside for specific purposes. So this doesn't include the net position restricted for the depreciation fund or the net position associated with the OPEB trust that I'll talk about in a minute. So this was 3.1 million, which is an increase from a deficit of 2.7 million. So that kind of shows the improved financial position of the department in 2024. And the last bullet point here I have is the OPEB funding status. So at June 30, 2024, the department was more than fully funded on their OPEB plan, which covers post-employment health insurance for employees. Uh, Generally in Massachusetts, there's not a lot of governments that have their OPEB fully funded. From what I've seen, it's you are well and above, the vast majority of other governments and setting aside funds to cover this future liability. And moving on to the income statement, there's a couple items that jump out as large changes the from the prior year. The first is the electric sales, which increased by 3.7%, and this was primarily due to a slight increase in kilowatt usage. But there was also a more substantial decrease in gas sales, and this is just due to the price of gas decreasing from the prior year. And these changes are also somewhat reflected in the operating expense side, where there was a substantial decrease in the cost of gas, which is just due to the supply and price volatility within the overall global energy market. And that is all I had, unless Kyle, you wanted to add anything.
No, that was great. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, though.
So historically, Peter Schwank, so we asked for the board, to approve, to ratify, to vote, for approval pending
Depending the pension number.
number.
So what does it mean to be more than 100% funded for OPEB? Why would someone want to be more than 100% funded?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's largely a byproduct of the assets within the plan and how the market has, how your investments have improved or how much investment income you've had. So if you're not 100% funded, you're going to hire an actuary and they're going to tell you this is the amount you should make, the contribution you should make to your plan, to have it funded over 25 to 30 years. So you guys have been doing that, certainly a lot more progressively than the rest of the Commonwealth and really the rest of the country, as Andrew had noted. And so over time, your assets have built up to meet that obligation, to meet that total liability. And so the closer you get to 100%, you have higher amount of assets. If 2023 and 2024 were both very good years market-wise, there's a very good chance that you're going to exceed 100% because you're just making investment income and it's restricted to the plan.
Okay.
And we do want to we've talked about keeping a little bit, maybe not 112%, but maybe targeting like 105% so that it would digest some market volatility in the long term.
Yeah, to provide some perspective, the plan had a net loss of investment income in 2022 of about 300,000, and it bounced back in 2023 with 430, and 2024 with $790,000 of investment income. So it's kind of a challenging thing to plan for.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
And I wanted to ask about the unrestricted net position. So we went from a $3 million deficit to a $3 million surplus. Did we do something deliberate to bring about that change, or is this a matter of timing?
It's largely a byproduct of the consistent sales offset by the decrease in the cost of electricity and gas. When you have a significant spike in those operating costs, and you're going to have a higher amount of net income for the year, and that's essentially what's driving the flip in the net deficit.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a follow-on question. So is it just a measure of the decrease of cost of electricity and gas, or also a reduction in sales? Since if we have like a milder weather or heating season.
Yeah, that certainly does drive your sale of gas, right? To provide some context, operating revenue in 2023 was about 46.7 million. 2024, it was 46.5 million. So almost a decrease of 200,000 in sales versus your total operating expenses, which were 45.5 million in 2023 and 37.2 in 2024. So while revenue decreased a couple 100,000, really the cost of purchased electricity and cost of purchased gas dropped significantly compared to the prior year.
Okay.
And Mark Roberts is smiling on the screen right now.
We don't often get smiles as auditors, so we'll take it.
Okay. So, are we looking to
Do a motion to approve contingent on the
the pension numbers?
Not being outside of the normal.
Okay. So I'll
Share the final audit with you once.
Yeah, we deliver the final.
Yeah.
It's in the spring, February, March.
before we do that, are there any other questions for Markham before we okay, I'll entertain a motion
To accept
to accept the auditor's report pending the pension numbers that are forthcoming.
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
I just want to say thank you to Kyle and Andrew. This was Zach moved on from Markham, and so this was the first year we got to work with Kyle and Andrew, and I think it was a pretty smooth process. Even though, like Kyle said, there was a new group of people and new faces, I think Mark and Joe did an amazing job working with them, and I think it went as smooth as prior years have gone. So we really appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you.
Okay, next order of business. Natural gas winter supply update by Mark Roberts from Sprague Energy. Hi, Mark. Welcome.
I was looking at the temperature today. I think it was about the same in South Carolina as it was up there. So that's not indicative of the weather. Kind of crazy. Does everybody have a copy of my presentation, or should I?
Yeah, no, they have a copy.
Have it.
The only place we were selling gas today is right here at Wakefield Gas and Light, because the accountant was complaining it was cold this morning, so somebody turned the heat on. So that's probably the only gas sales we had today.
Well, being a New England guy, I get yelled at home all the time by putting the fire on when it's 75 degrees outside because it's fall and you should have the fire on, just out of general practice. But if everybody has the presentation, I'll kick right into it. Same exact layout as last year, folks. So wanted to review how we did last year for the 23-24 winter, and then how we're looking for this coming winter and the following winter. So we'll talk about that. I'll give you a real quick update on the market conditions and what's going on in the energy world. And we'll just talk about the steps and where we stand for this year from a hedging perspective and budget perspective, and how it looks next year. So kicking into page 3. Last year, if you remember, we had a budget, a hedge position of $8.19 a decatherm, or roughly $4 million for the winter season. And then, as we discussed, I like to, for budget purposes, adjust that to account for what we call balancing, but that's basically buying and selling gas day to day, depending on the weather. And so our budget, Sprague's view of the budget at the city gate came in at $9.44. And I'll get into the weather in a bit, but we actualized at $7.82. So this past winter was a total home run in terms of how we performed, the town performed budget wise. You can see that we had planned or hedged for roughly 537,000 decks. That's up in the top volume wise, and we came in at 509. And so weather wise, overall it was a bit warmer than normal, but with a couple outliers there. Moving on to the next page, looking forward to this year, we're hedged about a nickel below where we were last year. So we're at 8.13. And so from a budget perspective, if you add $1.25, I mean, that gets us to about the same spot we were last year, a little bit below. And the market has been pretty flat. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of activity in it. Any questions on anything budget wise, or?
Yeah, the line adjusted budget, what is that, a weighted average of the above 3 lines?
Yeah, so that's the 813 up top highlighted, plus $1.25 a deck. And that $1.25 is just it's just a fluff factor. Put it in that way to try to account for, if it does get colder than normal, what the potential impact could be. And or conversely, if it's really, really warm and prices tank, we'd be selling off $8, $7 or $8 gas into a $3 or $4 market type thing.
So our goal, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about our goal each year, Mark, we try to be hedged. And so the risk we take with that is that sometimes there have been years where we've owned $7 gas and the market went down to 3 and 4. So we own $7 gas in a $4 market, but there's also been years where we've owned $8 gas in an $11 market. So we've won. And so those, that's the challenge, but we set a hedge target point, and that's what we try to hedge to each season.
Right. So if you kick over to the next page, this is the weather chart we go over every year. And right down at the bottom, you can see 2023 and 24. Seasonally, it was pretty close to the previous winter. We had a cool November. It was kind of weird. I mean, it was dank and cool, so heating load came on a bit early. And likewise, April. I mean, it was a typical New England spring where we had a hard time kicking into warmer weather. But nothing really exciting there weather-wise. We've been, just the past couple of years have been pretty non-eventful. The market dynamics have changed a little bit. I'll get into that in a second, but weather kind of status quo. And I'll show you on the next slide.
So can I ask a question or two on weather?
Sure.
What is your forecast based on in terms of, like, you're showing, I think, 13 seasons here. Is it is your projection based on like the mean of the 13 seasons or?
Oh, in terms of the volumetric requirements?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't go back 10 years. We look at the data, we normalize it from a weather perspective. COVID threw everything, put a monkey wrench into everything from a forecasting perspective, but the town is pretty much largely a heat load. And so that's pretty consistent. So we'll look at 10 years or 15 years on that. But really, it's Mark, Pete, and I looking at it, discussing any new projects or anything going on, and you know, working out a forecasted volume on a year-to-year basis. This year, it's flat compared to where it was last year. No real need to change anything because the load has remained pretty consistent. Pete, did I miss anything there or just?
So are we able to, as we move forward, parse out, like if you're showing a decline in volume, how much of that is due to fewer gas customers and how much is due to, more favorable weather? Because I feel like those will be two trends, right? That will be probably emerging over time. Will you be able to tell us, like separate the two out in terms of, we're seeing this forecast and you're right, like there's not a significant difference from one year to the next. But if there were, would you be able to say, oh, like 20% of this is due to fewer customers and the rest is due to more favorable weather or something along those lines?
The fewer customers or more customers comes from discussions with Pete and Mark.
Yep.
So we talk about changes, but absolutely 100%. So we can look at from a pure weather-driven perspective. If we have a really, really cold weather, those degree days that are shown there have a direct correlation to your usage. So that allows us to normalize it. And you just can't really hedge weather based on last year's usage. You got to normalize it to a degree. But that's where it's at. If we had a consistent trend in weather, we may factor that in, discussing with the town and say, hey, the last 3 winters have been really, really cold. Maybe we want to protect ourselves by hedging a little bit more this coming winter. But it's been just hasn't been that dynamic one way or the other. There were winters in the past where we looked at it and we said, hey, the market's crazy. The weather has been really unpredictable. Think back to the polar vortex days and all that. We modified our hedging volumes just to put us in from a hedging perspective, a conservative position so that if, it were to be cold again and prices were to go up, the town would be protected. But the last few winters have just been pretty non-eventful.
Which is a good thing. In terms of customers leaving the system, there's been very, very few, if any, that have actually left the systems of most. So we've done well over 200 heat pumps, but they haven't necessarily left the gas system completely. They're using it as a supplemental or a more of a primary, but there's still gas usage. So I think we've only had less than a handful, right, Joe, of that people that have actually completely eliminated the gas service.
Yeah, probably like 15, somewhere in that range.
That's good to know.
So on the next slide, this is the slide I put up last year. And the reason I'm showing that again is that what this represents, folks, is that what the price of natural gas is in New England on a day-to-day basis. So when you hedge natural gas, you're buying a daily volume that's ratable, so 3,000 decatherms a day. And then as the weather changes, I mean, you're buying a little bit more and a little bit less as you're buying incremental or you're selling off gas to meet the balancing requirements of the utility. What this chart shows you is that all the way on the left-hand side, that was the, winter of 13, 14 polar vortex, crazy winter. And then it shows you all the following winters in terms of what the peak price has been. So if you look right in the middle of the chart, you see that really tall line that tells you that in that winter of 17, 18, natural gas was selling for $90 a decatherm on a given day when it was really cold. So we look at that and we budget and plan around those type of spikes. If you turn the page to the next chart, that's been adjusted. It's a 10-year chart, so the polar vortex has fallen off the chart. But way on the right-hand side, you don't see much of a spike like you did even the winter prior to that. Natural gas never really got expensive, but the good news was it never really got super cheap. So even though the town used less gas than what we had purchased, we weren't getting hurt selling that gas off into the market, which is a big deal because there are times when you have those winters where it's cold and prices will go through the roof, or it's warm and then they'll just continue to tank. And that's largely driven on the LNG market and what's going on down at the Everett LNG plant or up at Canaport. And in the past, we had talked about New England natural gas prices in the winter being based heavily on LNG prices, and LNG, which I'll get into in a second, is now a globally traded commodity. And the last few years, it's been really based on what's been happening in Europe and through Ukraine and the pipelines and that type of thing. But everything there has really softened up a bit, particularly this past winter. There was no problem getting natural gas at all.
Yeah, 2 years ago, the variability that you saw in that winter, a lot of it had to do with weather, but it also had to do with Russia. The market was much more sensitive to fluctuations.
Yeah, and
Can I ask a follow-up question about the polar vortex 13, 14? The spot prices on page 5, they
Yep.
went up to $70 per decatherm. But then the next slide, it was not as high as the other spikes in 2017, 18 and 2022, 2023.
So if you look at the slide on page 5, that was the world last year, and it went back to the winter of 13, 14, and that's the big spike you see there. And then on the next slide, it's a 10-year look back, but that winter of 13, 14 came off.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Sorry. Yep.
So if you overlap them, they kind of they match, but you're just moving it over
Okay.
one.
Following now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, it didn't decrease. It's just it fell off the radar there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you see the little bump in the following winter of 14, 15.
Yeah.
That's what's showing on the
I
new chart.
see.
And the months don't really matter, right? Like it doesn't matter that we're looking at April 10th, or it does.
Well, you can, the chart actually, if you were to blow it up, takes it literally down to the day.
Right.
So I made this chart by uploading all the daily prices that natural gas was trading at on Tennessee Pipeline, which is what serves Wakefield. And then unfortunately just got crunched together. But it's really, this chart's really good to show you, what the peaky prices were when it's really cold, but also the density of the winter. When you look at that, you get a good flavor for, okay, even all the way on the left of the chart on page 6, you can see that, okay, the spike price when it was really cold only hit $30, but there was a whole lot of time when gas was trading, in the teens or in, in that range. It gives you a good snapshot. I mean, the price correlation to the weather correlation is pretty tight for the most part.
I guess my question is there a reason why you picked April 10th and May 8th as the two dates to show on these charts?
Oh, I didn't pick it. That was Excel. It just
Okay.
started.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to confirm.
Yep. No, it's just I went back 10 years and I think I started it. I think the chart technically starts May 1. Why I put May 8th there, I'm not sure.
I think he was born around then, so it's each year he gets older.
Special day.
Okay. So how are we looking in the energy markets? The next slide. And there's obviously a lot going on. And so the first one I have on there, geopolitical events very much in play. So obviously everything in the Middle East, if anything goes rogue there at any given time, that is going to impact the oil market significantly, which ties in heavily with natural gas as well. So we always factor that in. Right now, it looks like, everything is kind of okay. So, but we put that in as a potential event. On the next bullet, global LNG markets increasingly driving prices. The global LNG market, particularly as it impacts the United States, is a big driver. And the United States every year increases its LNG exports globally, particularly after Ukraine. We've ramped up LNG exports out of the Gulf significantly, and I think that's forecasted to double within 7 years, depending on construction schedules and all that. But the United States continues to have an abundance of natural gas, and it's all, the whole market is geared up towards exporting. Asia is a huge market. Europe became a huge market in the last few years, and it continues to drive prices. There's two parts of the town's price. I mean, there's the financial part, NYMEX, which is the price of natural gas where it trades down in the Henry Hub down in Louisiana. And those prices are relatively inexpensive. They're $2, $3, $3.50, depending on what month and what year you're looking at. But those prices, the market consensus is it's relatively bullish. So the thought being is that 2-3 years from now, natural gas will probably be $1 or $2 a decatherm higher down in Louisiana or Houston, just because of the fact of the sheer amount of gas that's being exported. Mexico as well, exporting a lot more to Mexico than we have in the past with their increased manufacturing production in that area. So LNG also, as I mentioned earlier, ties in to Europe. And the way the global LNG market works is wherever it's the most expensive, that's where all the global supply goes to. So if there is an event or something that happens globally, that impacts LNG prices. It's been Ukraine for the last several years, but if you think back to in Japan when they had the meltdown on one of their nuclear plants, that was all quickly replaced with LNG, and that changed the market. And Southeast Asia has really been increasing their imports of LNG as well. So just it's just something we keep an eye on because that gets into the long-term forecasting, but it also impacts New England because again, New England is pipeline capacity constrained. And I don't foresee any new pipelines coming on in the region. So what happens is that when it is extremely cold, we're 100% dependent on LNG supply and the ability to be able to, keep that gas flowing. The fourth bullet is kind of a biggie, and it's an interesting one. It's one we haven't talked about. Russia, Europe, Ukraine throughput expires December 24th. So last year I talked about the Nord Stream pipelines and the year prior to that. And those were the ones 3 years ago that Putin shut down production going into Europe. And then there ended up being sabotage on one of the pipelines. There was two of them. In either case, both of those lines got shut down. Okay, that impacted European natural gas supply a significant amount, but it wasn't the end of the world. Well, if you look at a map of Europe and you look at Ukraine, a vast majority, well over 90% of all of Russia's natural gas that goes to Europe goes right through Ukraine, both on the northern segment of the country and the southern. So it will go up into Poland or through Algeria and, either hits the southern European markets or the northern European markets. And they have a throughput agreement. And a throughput agreement basically means that both Ukraine and Russia are getting paid for the gas going through those pipelines. And even after the war started, neither country wanted to mess with that because it was a significant source of revenue for those two countries. Well, that agreement expires in December. And what happens is that with that is going to be a key driver, because this is where the politics come into it. If Ukraine and Russia aren't able to come to some form of agreement, then in theory, that could impact the amount of gas going, a significant amount of gas going to Europe. Everybody's just in a holding pattern right now to see what happens. It's in everybody's best financial interest to keep gas flowing, but there hasn't been any agreement at this point. And so the markets are very much keeping their eye on that. Renewable and alternative energy sources continue to expand in Europe. So that potentially would offset natural gas requirements. In some cases, obviously, electric vehicles increase electricity usage, and it could increase the amount of natural gas fueling those plants. But we keep an eye on that. It's not as big an issue as it was last year, and the last bullet, conservation measures and mindset, still up. I put a question mark on that because last year and the year prior, Europe was very much in the mindset, put on an extra sweater, keep the thermostat down, don't use, conserve as much natural gas as possible. That may have softened up a bit. I think, I'm not saying folks are complacent there, but it's the situation in Europe is that their storage inventory is full, or where it should be at this time of year. And depending on the weather and depending on those type of forecasts, we'll see what happens. But that's what's driving prices globally right now. Locally here, back home, in the past it's been El Nino, El Nino, El Nino. This year it's La Nina, the polar opposite of an El Nino. The water temperatures are a bit warmer in the Pacific, and the forecast for the Northeast is forecasted for a wetter winter season and normal to cooler temperatures. I think the last one I saw adjusted it more towards normal. So for New England, could mean a lot of snow. But from a temperature perspective, we're looking at normal. Now, normal, keep in mind, is a lot cooler than it was last winter, where we were below normal. So we haven't had a traditional normal winter in several years. So that's where the forecast. Domestically, storage is full. Coming off a warm winter, you didn't need to inject that much. So in the spring and summer, prices softened up quite a bit. But the one thing we are keeping an eye on is now that Mystic is closed, Grid and Eversource have entered into peaking agreements with Constellation for the LNG, and the operating aspects of that is yet to be determined on how that impacts the availability of spot LNG in the market. So we're keeping an eye on that. The forecasts are everything should be fine, but we just haven't been through it. All of our schedulers and supply folks are in a wait and see mode to see how things go in that front. Any questions with that? Exciting stuff, huh? So, and this gets back to, this is just the prices of LNG and prices in Europe. And what this chart shows is that prices have been really flat the last year. So that 39.30 that's highlighted in the lower right corner, that's in euros to megawatt hours. The conversion rate is something like 3.1 or something. And so natural gas in Europe is in the $12 to $15 a decatherm area, which is pretty much just a little bit above where it historically has been trading. So nothing exciting there, but that can drop. That can change in a drop of a hat. And then on page 9, just getting at where we're at. So this coming winter, we're 100% hedged, had been for a while. So at $7.27, that's excluding the LNG part of the budget. But natural gas this winter is here locally is in the $10 to $12 range. So we're below market in terms of the financial markets, and so we're looking good there. Next winter, 25-26 is presently 50% hedged at 702, so it's below where we're at now. And we've been keeping an eye on the market. Those numbers off to the right, CM is current market, and the current market's 7.25, and if you go out to 26-27 the following year, it's at about 750. And we've been watching it just constantly soften. So we're just sort of been in a holding pattern before we take out any additional hedges. And there's no sense of urgency on it because that doesn't, the next winter and the following winter there's not a lot of volatility in it. But if there were something significant to occur, we'd probably take out another layer just to offer that much more protection. The peaking will be purchased at market as needed. I put in $15 for budget purposes, but it'll probably come in lower than that from the utility. And as I said, we're continuing to monitor those forward prices and keep an eye on it. And where if I see anything that changes where we should take out an additional hedge, I'll notify you guys ASAP. And the last bullet, reassess net grid capacity peaking options. We're keeping an eye on what's going to be available in the market. In the past, we could go out and purchase LNG to supplement the town's portfolio, and we'll keep an eye on that in Q4. And it's the type of thing that if the winter starts off warm, we may want to go out and if prices soften, we may want to go out and take a hedge on it. But mile high, we're looking good. I mean, it's we're continuing to ride the market down. There will be a point, like anything, something will happen, and eventually this thing will start to go up. But hopefully it's in a nice, smooth, ratable manner that takes place over, years, 2 or 3 years out. So we won't hopefully have that crazy event where prices spike and that type of thing. But even if they did, we've got a good chunk hedged, so we're looking good. And that is it from my end. Any questions or? This has been a great meeting because of the fact there have been times I've been here and, having to explain myself when price has been crazy, right? So
No pitchfork tonight.
Yeah.
but there were times I've been pitched for quite heavily, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
That looks good.
I think Mark and I have had, a history now of understanding like what's happening, and I think, we rely on his advice, and I think we've had a good strategy so far. And again, the success of last winter ties right back into the prior presentation that we were able to recover financially our cash position and our all our ratios based on the fact that we had such a good year on the gas side. Helped a lot.
Yeah. And for those I haven't met, I mean, I've been working with the town since the mid-90s, back when Bill Wallace was general manager, and we were putting the take station in, going all the way back that far. So I'm very, very familiar with the load and the characteristics and all the nuances that make up the town's assets. So I think, we've been doing a good job collectively, Mark, Pete, and I, just in trying to make the best out of a crazy New England market at times where, sometimes we have control and sometimes we don't.
Great, we appreciate it. Thank you, Mike.
I have one like longer term question. So in strategic planning this year, we talked about doing like a 7 to 10 year outlook, like extending the outlook further than what we've done in the past. How far out do your projections go currently on like volumes, heating degree, all of the components that make for your forecasting?
Well, so forecasting is one of those things that, the federal government, the EIA will, forecast out literally 10 years.
Yeah.
If you get into that macro type of analytics, I'm not being jaded here, but, the degree of accuracy with some of the longer term forecasts, are okay. But what happens is that usually something happens significantly that just moves the market in one direction or the other. So we tend to look at it as the big drivers now are reduction natural gas usage being replaced by renewables, what's happening on the power side in New England specifically in terms of natural gas usage for power plant generation. And, from a supply perspective, it's become such a non-issue with all of that shale gas that came into play 10, 15 years ago. There's just an abundance of natural gas. So that's not an issue. What drives forecasts are obviously politics to a degree. Here we are the day after Election Day. So, I would think that, there'll be on the federal level more of an aggressive push to increase production. But politics only comes into it so much because producers will only produce natural gas where it's beneficial. So I think, from the U.S. perspective, it really is going to be driven on how much we end up exporting. And the overall demand, I think, is declining, but the export aspect of it is increasing significantly. So with that, I mean, there's a whole litany of forecasting services we use, and it's kind of a nice to know type thing. But as we can appreciate in New England, it's like, well, what's the temperature going to be 3 days from now? Who knows? I mean, and I don't mean to make light of it, because from a modeling perspective, we look at it, but even from a modeling perspective, we've got it down to the point now where we can we can look at low cash prices, warmer, a warm winter, all the different scenarios to cold. And, so you end up with this bandwidth of where prices could possibly be. And that's what we more or less use in terms of advising our customers on, when to take out a longer term hedge. But in our world, natural gas really only trades 3 years out, maybe 4, in terms of pipeline transportation here in New England. The natural gas futures on NYMEX, you can go out 10 years or 15 years and even longer if you want to get a bank involved to take a hedge on it. But it doesn't really mean much because that's only a small percentage of what the cost of gas is here in New England. If we were in Chicago or the Midwest, it's a whole different story. Even in Pennsylvania, I mean, natural gas is there are times when in the Gulf, to give you an example, the producers pay people to take the natural gas. It actually trades negative. In the Midwest, like Pennsylvania, you're selling gas at $1 a decatherm, that type of thing. But not the case in New England. It's totally different than the rest of the country.
And that's due to congestion of piping coming into the region, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's limited capacity, and it'll be that. I don't see that changing unless something really weird happens, and we'll be all talking about other things if that happens. So.
So Mark, do we feel that our winter pricing is going to be stable and less than last year or on par? Do we know what that?
I think
Well, that's
the
$1.25 I put in.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I meant our customer price, our CCF pricing to the customer.
Well, based on this, the commodities that we've hedged and his forecasted price, we should be able to, we're trying to hold constant.
Okay.
Yeah, from a budget perspective, there doesn't seem to be a lot of difference between last year and this year. And even the following year. So from a rate perspective, it's good news because there won't be any, sticker shock or anything like what we've had in years past.
Yeah, we were below National Grid last winter and we forecast to be below National Grid this winter. And the other thing was National Grid just had a 39% rate increase because of other issues, so.
Yeah, what were the other issues? Because I saw that and
I required payments into Mass Save. They've increased the Mass Save budget significantly by more than 25%.
Really?
Yeah, so therefore they've had to adjust their rates to accommodate that.
But still 39% is a huge.
That's on natural gas, 39% on their natural gas.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news for us then, because I thought we were due for the same kind of scary increase, but apparently not, so that's good.
We're starting out at $1.19 this heating season, and we always start out at a target, right? And it's based on the budget that, Mark is talking about. That's kind of how we do it as far as the rates to our customers. And then, one of those half a dozen bullet points that, areas of exposure that Mark kind of outlined in the presentation can hit. And, we have to deviate from that $1.19 because of that. So that's kind of the approach that we take. So
last year, where it was such a good year, we were able to lower our end of season gas price much earlier than we did it a full month early.
Yeah.
Then we normally when we get to the summer, the end of the heating season, we were able to lower the price. We did it a full month earlier this past year.
Mark, any thoughts on you touched upon Mystic closure and utility contracts impacting? So those utility contracts are in effect until 2030 with
Constellation.
the LNG Everett terminal.
Yep.
Any I guess, concerns about, I guess, those contracts not continuing
Beyond,
beyond that, or?
well, going out 10 years, I mean, big picture, I mean, that Everett plant is absolutely needed. Until this region is at a point where the amount of gas that they bring in, it just isn't needed anymore. I mean, I used to co-manage the supply group at Boston Gas way back in the day, and I don't have or haven't seen those agreements, but I mean, those are several 100,000 decatherm a day type of peaking resources that literally go all the way back to the winter of '79 with the freeze off and all that. So I mean, those I mean, those supplies are absolutely critical to meet not only the region but the utility requirements. If we were to have a design day really cold period to keep the entire region heated. If you don't, and but those who don't remember what happened in '79, and I wasn't even here, I was like still a teenager, but that's when the really cold winter, and Boston Gas had to literally shut down Hull, and there was the equivalent of natural gas brownouts and curtailments in certain areas, and hospitals and nursing homes and everybody, their folks were impacted. And Ed King was governor back then, and said, we have to make a move to plan towards a design day, worst case scenario. And so that's from a utility planning perspective. That's what they plan for. And without that LNG, the pipeline capacity alone that all the utilities have, most of the utilities, I should say, but certainly all the ones in eastern New England, isn't sufficient to meet the peak day, and certainly not a design day requirements. If you think back the old days, I mean, there's a lot more dual fuel customers and folks that burned oil,
Mhm.
a lot of fuel switching and that type of thing, and those are all pretty much gone now. I mean, just I mean, the power plants have distillate oil that they keep on reserve and that type of thing, but it's just not a part of the supply portfolio the way it used to be. But even on the cold days we've had in the past winters, those plants have been burning oil. So just because it's needed.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
I'm good.
Not,
It can be a little
Thank you,
dry.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, guys, have a great evening. Thank you as always, and reach out if you have any questions or if you need anything from my end. Be glad to help.
Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Thanks.
You too.
So now we'll turn to old business. Any energy park updates
Uh,
or other project updates?
So from some of the compliance requirements for, we had to submit a filing with the state on our action so far as part of compliance with the fact that it was handled through I forget what they call it, the petition basically through the state. We had a series of requirements. We had to have last month we did a filing on where we stood on those requirements. So we had to give the 2 acres of land at the top behind BB, where did that stand?
Uh-huh.
We agreed to plantings, we agreed to, like, all the things that we agreed to. So we filed a letter last month, just updating the state on that they require an annual update on that.
What do you mean the state?
The DOER,
Oh, okay.
they required an update. So we provided that. The planting for the trees at Maple Way, is being completed this week.
Oh, good.
So, and the work on the, Burns Park, the station's been cleaned out. And we had our final environmental testing, so we're all clear. So the construction of the Burns Park will start next week.
Oh, wow.
When do we expect that to?
We'll probably have most of it physically constructed before winter, but then a lot of the plantings will probably have to wait till spring. So.
And when do we expect, like, after plantings, so like spring of next year would be open to the public?
Yeah.
And so, and then at some point it gets officially handed over to the town.
Yeah.
It's still our property until we
Yes.
finish.
Yeah.
When do we plan on actually handing it over to the town?
Next spring sometime. We still have to finish the work and they're not gonna want it until we've finished everything, so.
And who's involved with the
I
design?
can, the design, so Brett Riley did a preliminary design. We met with Joe Conway and with the town, and so they approved the design, so we begin construction next week.
They approved the design and the plantings for both the Burns Park and Maple Way.
So it sounds like that's worthy of a press release or something like.
Well, there's gonna be a press release on the Maple Way soon.
Okay.
We were out there today, taking pictures, and then Burns Park, we wanna get a little, we just got the clearance that the site was clear, clear of, environmental hazards.
Oh, so we can go back to the garden now.
Oh, I don't know about that.
What's that?
That's what we can make.
To eat
Like,
food grown on that land,
Oh,
But if they would be raised beds, they wouldn't be underground.
whatever you wanna do.
Are we, for Maple Way, are we taking any sort of, drone picture to kind of show this?
Yeah, we consider that, but a lot of the trees that are planted are.
You can't see it.
Yeah,
You can't see them yet, okay.
They don't have a lot of leaves on them, so when you get up in the air, you wouldn't see them.
Yeah, especially.
What we decided to do was start with the initial plan. It shows the overview of the plants that we're planting and then a before, so we'll simulate something and then maybe we'll do a drone shot later on when it starts to.
When the spring, when the leaves, yeah.
The leaves on.
You could do it like Star Wars style.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have some aerial shots before and then we have the design, that.
It's good to take the shot now and, 5 years and 10 years after
Right.
the trees have a chance to grow and mature to show the progress of the site.
So we're planting 92 trees over there. So we committed, so we took down 128 trees. We committed to the town that we'll replace it with 200 trees. We're gonna be over 200 this year. If you add in last year, since we started this program, we'll be more than almost triple the number of trees we took out. So,
The
we'll be
Maple
well
Way,
over 300, so.
once the trees are planted, is it our responsibility to care for them or?
I think watering them, just get them going because it's been so dry. That's normally a very wet area over there, but just because this year is so dry, so we'll water it for up to the winter. And then we'll probably end up doing some watering in the spring of next year and then that'll be it.
Does that go over to the town?
The town, Dennis waters the trees right now. We try to keep them going the first year and then he picks up and does the watering. The real hope honestly is that that's a very wet area. And that it retains the water and it's fine, but.
So one of the things we talked about with Brett the other day was the fact that depending on the size of the tree, there's two impacts. The Conservation Commission told us we were using spindly trees, but there's pros and cons to the size of the tree you use. If you use too big a tree, it takes a lot longer for it to establish its root system. The smaller trees establish their root systems much faster, so they become more self-sustaining a lot faster. So there's trade-offs. So he did use smaller trees in a lot of locations in Maple Way because the long-term benefit of it establishing itself much faster. So, so that, that's an point to note that, there was a lot of thought that, so the species of trees that were planted there, Brett did a survey of what was already there that had survived well. And so there's 5 species of trees that we planted that were all consistent with what was already in that area. So.
They're all native trees.
Yeah.
Great.
great.
Also,
And then the bids are going out for construction of the site. You know, we've actually, we're gonna be starting doing site work with our own internal contractor and our guys on the duct banks work, and then we're getting pricing on the foundations, and we have to do a permit for the foundations.
Yeah, so we're meeting with the building department tomorrow to pull the building permit for the foundations over there. And then we'll start doing some more site work. Really, it'll be active starting on the 18th of the month. And they'll be over there through the winter. And then the battery folks will be there to start their foundations in early January.
They'll be able to work straight through the winter.
Yep, if the winter is mild and not that bad, or just not below freezing and the soil's not frozen, they'll work all winter. Yep, so currently, we plan on having the battery up and running before June 1st is the goal. And then, you know, and that, so the battery folks are on board with that. That's a temporary connection to the grid. And then we'll make it a permanent connection later on when we're ready.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's for, you know, peaking purpose.
Yeah, we'll do it for monthly peaking, and then we want to get it online for the annual capacity peak, which, you know, could happen in June. So we want to be online before June 1st.
So the battery, because this contract is a shared savings contract, the battery company is very motivated too, because that's where they make their money, so.
Yeah.
So it's been you know, they've been pretty good to work with, and 3 were installed this year at other munis.
Yeah, the one that's up and running right now is, it's working as a microgrid too, is Groton. So Groton is a microgrid working just the battery with the school. They don't have any other generating assets, just the battery. So they just finished that a little while ago.
That's good that we're not first, that worked out some of the kinks and bugs.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, ours is definitely more complicated because we have solar and we have the generator and the battery, so it's a lot more complicated, but they did work out some bugs when they did theirs, so that's a good thing.
Groton's just charging up their battery on the off-peak, right off of the.
Yep. Yep. Correct, yeah.
And that's how we charge BV as well. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
It's not, it's the cheapest time to charge is during the day, during the solar hours. So like 10 o'clock in the morning is the best time to charge. It used to be at night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, but now it's during the day, during, you know, a sunny day. So that's the best time to charge. That's when the cost is the lowest.
Will we get kind of metric out of Groton? Is that like shared with us through?
Yeah, through the battery.
Through the battery, yeah.
So we get that now with MWIC, so we'll get the same thing. Yeah, I mean, they're motivated to meet all the peaks and they'll share the same data with us and MWIC, because they have to reconcile with MWIC as well. So we'll follow the same model.
So I don't know if there's any other questions on any of the project work. It's pretty busy. There's a lot of construction still going on. Head of the Lake is moving along incredibly quickly.
Yeah, so we're starting, they're moving along with the building. So we just met with them Tuesday, and we're going to be setting the transformers and switches in December, and then start to pull cable in December as well. And then they're supposed to give me a schedule on when each building will be ready. And then we'll be putting the meters in. I just ordered the meters for the project yesterday. So they'll give me a schedule on when each building will be up. You know,
they're moving probably ahead of schedule.
It is moving along. So their schedule has changed a little bit. They're definitely going a lot quicker.
In the capital budget, we also have money for the other side of the project from the edge of the building on this side out to North Ave, to continue the upgrades of the underground infrastructure. So we have a lot of capacity at the Honeydew side, and we'll have an entirely new duct bank all the way through the property now, removing all the poles. But that ends at the edge of the construction site. So we need to extend from that point to North Ave to complete the loop around the lake. We have obviously supply coming through there, but it's kind of a limiting factor right now. The size of
circuit we could bring over.
And it's an undersized circuit as well. So now we're bringing it up to full capacity so that we can have a loop around the lake, and with the potential for a second one in the future if needed.
Will it be underground?
Yes,
Through that property it will.
it'll all be underground.
Through
Up
the
to
property, meaning through the grass or through the street?
through the street, because they're doing that road over.
Yeah.
So that road is going to be done over. So while, before they do the road over, we'll do what infrastructure we need to, or we'll utilize some of the existing,
Mhm.
which is actually the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then if you see over there, there's two switch on
Yeah.
this side. There's two switches that we already have. One was for the 200 corner power and the other one is for a future.
Yeah.
Which is coming with the storage place.
yeah, we'll replace those switches, but the bases will stay. Yeah.
Going back to the energy for the Vogue, you said that there was an issue with the roof and may impact our solar.
They resolved that.
They resolved.
Resolved that. So we're back on track with the original design.
Okay, so there's no.
Matter of fact, we just finished the, I think 90% for both the high school and the vocational school. The solar designs are just about 95% complete.
Yeah.
When
And
did those
then-
go out for RFP?
Probably in the summer of next year. Well, we have to figure out how we want to structure that. So we have a couple options, so we need to talk about a little bit more detail, but we'll definitely go out. We're ready to go out next year. And then they want to get the solar on the roof of the vocational school, I think in 26. So we want to make sure we have something in place to accomplish that.
They've finished the steel work at the tech and as you can see, if you've driven by there, the steel work at the
High school.
high school is moving along.
Yeah, both schools are moving right along and the high school is really setting up, so. Pretty fast.
I don't know if there's any other questions of that. The Ken Chase thing, it's getting moved probably to the spring now.
Yeah, the family asked to put it off until they can get back to us and let us know when it's gonna work for them.
In terms of grants, I sent out a notice to everybody. We were awarded a second PHMSA grant. Thanks to the work that Joe and Jimmy Brown and Raven put in. We were awarded 1.4 million on top of our 1.3 million. So we're gonna get another big check from Mark's office.
Thank you to Joe. Thank you to Raven.
Yeah. So
Congrats.
that's another big section of gas main that will get replaced with federal dollars. And the existing project, I don't know if you've seen, like that Water Street, Crescent Street, Otis Street, that whole area has been underway now for a little over a month, moving along quite well. They're gonna finish the main on Crescent, which goes all the way from Main to Water. That'll be replaced and then we'll begin doing the service cutovers next week. And that's the part that will retire the last bit of cast iron we have. We have the last bit of cast iron we have is Crescent and Otis. And so once this work is done, the gas main will be all installed by the end of this week. They'll start service cutovers next week and within a month, we should have all the services cut over and we'll be retiring the last piece of cast iron we have in the system. Which is huge.
That's part of that is the like Crescent Street. Will that be repaved curb to curb? Is the town doing that? Is that on us or is it just gonna be the patch over the?
It's gonna be, so we'll patch it this year with a standard 2.5 foot patch. And then after a freeze cycle, next year we'll cut it to the 4 foot wide, laser trench. It's wider. We let the season go by first.
To settle.
So just a question, do you remove the cast iron or do you bury it like,
It's just retire it in place. We
like,
take the gas out of it and then retire it in place.
okay.
So but that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I'd like a piece of that. That's huge.
Yep.
Take a piece out, put it in epoxy, give it to Raven or Brownie.
Yeah. I don't know if they'd want rusty old pipe, but
Make it gilded.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gilded.
Yeah.
Could be his retirement fund.
That's heavy.
I'll do it quick if he retires.
Okay, on to new business. So there's a couple items that I added to the agenda. I just want to clarify what they are. The first one, MLP Legislative Caucus / meme letters on draft regulations. That is, a discussion about a procedural improvement, about information sharing. Whereas the second one, draft regulations on clean heat standard and large building energy reporting, that is more of a substantive discussion on those draft regulations or those. And given that we don't have Elton here tonight, I was going to suggest that we perhaps move the second item on the agenda under new business and either defer it to the next meeting if we have time. Because I'd like to have his input as well. And so thank you, Pete, for providing the materials. I think you provided the letters that were submitted, the presentation from SDP on the clean heat standard and also the draft regs in this board book. So
Can I ask a question on the deferral or moving of number 2? I'm thinking it might be helpful to have some information going into that discussion. And I'm wondering whether we can discuss it long enough so we can establish if there's information from WMGLD that would be helpful to have.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the only thing that I would like to discuss tonight in that. And just get input, and Elton may have further questions or information requests when we meet next time.
Okay.
Understanding that he might.
Okay. So we'll keep that on the agenda tonight just to make sure that we have all the information we need to have that discussion. And we can decide, I think, to defer that to the next meeting. What
kind of information? Because in my mind, what I was going to do is go to the DEP website and just try to find out procedurally where they are, when this whole process began. And find out if there have already been comments and see if there's a way to.
That's the process piece.
Comments, that kind.
Talking about the actual regulations. I'm talking about number 2.
That's what I'm
Not
talking.
The process piece, which we are going to discuss tonight. But they were talking about.
No. The first thing that you were talking about was just information sharing from Pete and Meme to us. So in other words, they sent a letter to the legislators without sending it to us first, so we didn't know what it was. I think that's what you meant by procedural. But I'm talking about number 2, like as far as understanding thinking about information that we would want to have to try to understand the big picture.
Yes.
I'm talking about DEP procedures, which is
Got it.
separate.
Okay.
I think,
Yep.
am I right?
Yes, and I think that Jen also has some questions about information
Mhm. So that's
related to
the,
number 2.
yeah, so that's all I'm saying, is that's the information that I'm gonna want.
Okay.
And then what other information do other people want to try to get their hands on?
So I would like to know what the requirements would be for WMGLD. So they give a lot of numbers in the legislation about like statewide or, for example, a utility of this size. But I would actually like to know if we were to be under the clean heat standard, what do you estimate?
So right now,
our
I
requirements would
sent
be?
it.
And for electricity and gas, because we have both.
Well, yeah, and it's very unclear how that works together too. So do we have 2 goals? Do we have 1 goal?
I would think we'd have 2, right?
Yeah, and then
one
what do
for
we
each.
pay penalties on? And so those are all the problems with this regulation. I mean, it's.
But so just to complete the request, and then I would like to know like how many, like what are we doing currently with our energy efficiency? How does it compare to, right? what our estimate would be for like 2020, whatever the first year would be, which I guess might be like 2026.
So in 2026, on the electric side, we would have to do 23. Based on the current structure of how it's worded, we would have to do 23 conversions.
Okay.
And a percentage of those would have to be low income,
Right.
and then the penalty for low income is not clear. It's somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000 per customer that you don't convert, and the customers on the standard would be 6,000. So it was, right now, at least the way I'm reading it, is we would have 19 times $6,000 penalty plus 4 at 20,000. It was somewhere between 12 and 20,000. It's not clear.
Yeah, I guess if you could just like put that on paper,
Yeah, I think that's the.
that would be helpful.
That's it.
What we're,
Yeah.
like, as it's drafted.
Yeah.
What does those impacts look like for
Well,
us?
that's why I
Yeah.
did share an email that
Yeah,
says,
yeah,
so year one, it would add 0.5% to our base cost.
okay.
The penalty would,
The penalty would.
if we didn't do anything at all. But then when I look in our board book, I see we've done 90 heat pumps in the last year.
Yeah, but-
So this is what I'm trying to
But the
figure out.
problem with the regulation is that those don't count.
So that's what I want to understand. In our discussion.
Those don't count, and you only get partial credit if they didn't completely remove their
True.
service.
Yes,
So-
that's what I want to discuss. is
Yeah,
Where we are with all of that.
that's-
Yeah.
Kind of to Jen's point is like, what are we doing now? What counts, what doesn't count?
Right.
What makes it count? And then the kind of impact of to make some a conversion to heat pump, to make it count, what does that kind of financial burden look like for us? And then,
Well, it would look like the penalties, because why would we spend more than that? If it would cost us 20 grand to convert somebody, but we can pay a penalty of 6, why would we pay 20? It's bad business. So, and the other side of that is, why are we involved in it at all? You know, this is a different issue, and that's, you know, we'll talk about that later, but the reality is that this is horrible legislation. It's being forced on utilities when we don't heat a single house. We provide electricity and gas. You know, people make their own choices about how they want to heat their homes. They're dragging utilities into that next place. So, and I think personally, I feel that it's because they can carry a stick against utilities, and they can't make Sharon change her heating system. They can't tell you to change your heating system, but they can tell the utilities that we're going to make you pay a lot of money unless they do. So we're getting dragged into something that's nothing to do with us. Our goal to make 2050 is to have a clean power supply. We're at 53% non-carbon emitting. We have plans to be, you know, where we're going to be in 30, 40, 50. We have all those goals, and we're well on our way to do those. We're being dragged into a place that we've never been dragged into before. And we're being held accountable to it. Our ratepayers are being asked to pay huge penalties because of that. So that's the frustration that a lot of us have with this, you know. And we've met with both, and I did share this, we had a discussion a little bit in April, because I shared that we met with the DEP while I was away in Florida. We had a conversation with the DEP about our concerns about the regulation as a meme group. The meme group met with, there were 5 of us on the call. We met with meme and we shared our concerns about. Subsequent to that, we met with the Attorney General's office to share our concerns about the cost to consumers. And so that whole separate memo that I sent you guys the other day talked about the concern about the cost, because all they're doing is adding cost to utility customers because they don't want to make it a requirement on the law side. They're trying to do it through a regulation. And so that's the other side of this concern, is that it's just adding a huge amount of cost to a market that's already has to go up. It's going up because we have to invest in infrastructure. There's no doubt about that. We also have to buy renewables, which are way more expensive. The wind contract, we haven't even had the numbers released yet, but the cost is more than double the current market price of electricity. So our commodity cost is going to go up. and we're being forced into all these other places. All that's doing is continuing to drive up the utility bill. So it makes the payback for these customers even further away. If we're forcing everybody to go over electric heat and then we're jacking up the heat price, what are we doing to our customers? It's not a good way to do it, but that's where but our biggest issue and the reason that they went to the Mass Caucus was that it shouldn't apply to munis to begin with, because we're not distribution companies. We're a separate entity. We've always been defined as a separate entity, and because we have local control. And that doesn't, just because I'm very concerned about this, doesn't mean that the board couldn't say, yeah, we want to still give $20,000 rebates. The board votes to do that, we do that, and we'll figure it out. But that doesn't mean Georgetown has to do it, or Raleigh has to do it, or so that, each board can make their own decision. Marblehead is a different board than Reading. And so each board can make those decisions as to how they want to do that. So what our number one point has been, it is an affront to local control. So Reading is different than Wakefield, is different than Raleigh, is different than Georgetown. So it's an attack on local control. And that's one place that MEME has for 50 years been united. In any affront to local control, we fight back. And so that's why the caucus was engaged, and that's what the precipitation of those letters were. Now, the letters weren't even written or shared until October 17th. So, and then they sent the municipal caucus sent the two chairs, one from the House, one from the Senate, sent the letters out to the representatives themselves. And then I just seconded it with an email, just make sure you're aware that this is out there. So, but it was sent from the state rep and the senator to the rest of the members of that caucus, who are anybody that has a municipal in their service territory. So it went to Kate, Donald, and the Senator Jason Lewis. So those were all sent out before I sent anything out. So.
Right. What was the, well, we're kind of going into the first, topic here, but, so can we just, before we go into that, can we just wrap up what the pieces of information that we need to have that discussion in full? So I guess it sounded like.
So I think they were asking for numbers.
Specific impact.
What drives the specific, like the 0.5 cent to start with, what drives that? And then what would our target numbers have to be going forward, and what will the penalties be?
Yeah.
And how it's still not really clear to me, and I've read it a couple of times. So is it double the number of customers because we're gas and electric? How do you get credit for one and not the other? The whole check and balance and credits and buying credits and all this, it's a very complicated tool that I have no idea how we're going to make work. But besides, because don't forget, you're also being asked to deal with oil, not just gas utilities, but oil companies.
Yeah.
So Mark's oil man, who has one truck, he's going to have to somehow figure out how to play in this market. I don't know. But so those are a lot of the complexities. But from what I can tell, based on that, I can give a projection of how many per year our percentage of the total is supposed to be.
Okay, that would be helpful. Yep. I wonder if the other 3 gas and light munis are wondering about the same.
Oh, yeah.
I would think our specific comments would be different because we have gas.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like unique to us. So that's why.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if we have questions about how gas would work, I would think we'd want to get clarity on that, right?
Mhm.
Because
it's unique to us.
It's unique to us, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, the purpose of the letters was to focus on local control and cost.
Yes.
So.
With those letters going out, what is the kind of consensus of us being us collectively being munis opted out of this? Because that was kind of when the letter came across, for me, my initial reaction was kind of that, you know, the removing of that control. And while I agree with the principles of that, the mechanisms I think are incorrect. And, you know, we as a board, to your point, if we want to fund $20,000 rebates, that's our prerogative as this body. As you know, Reading can do what Reading does. And then, you know, how those funding sources, and that was kind of my feedback to the representatives that reached out to me, is like, there's a funding mechanism problem here, and I would rather see the states and Fed give funds to the muni entities to then craft those programs that make sense for their territories.
Or come up with a completely different plan that's better, such as handling at the point of sale, which is one of the things we've been trying to push. Because that's when there's cash on the table. You're not trying to force customers or leverage customers into making a switch. At the point of sale, so I did some stat work. There's approximately 1.5 million single-family homes in Massachusetts. There's also approximately 50,000 single-family homes that sell every year. If you do the math, in less than 30 years, most every house turns over. So that's the number. It's like 29 and change. That's how frequently houses turn over. Now, sometimes houses sell twice and that counts. But the other side of that is that we also do major renovations. And if you exceed a certain percentage of the value, it's considered a major renovation. So if they make it a requirement that you have to bring it up to code, if you sell it or if you make a major renovation, that's a much cleaner way to do it. If there's cash on the table at that time and you're not just raising everybody's rates to get it done, you can get it done in a mechanism and a point in time when there's cash on the table. Either you're taking out a loan to do a major renovation or you're selling your house and there's cash there. And it becomes a lot less impactful. Mrs. Murphy is not, does not want to change her gas range and her gas heat right now. But if she sells her house and you make it a requirement, just like I've shared this conversation with Sharon, Title V.
I was just looking at it, I was like, the septic Title V.
100%. Make it just like that. I can't sell, I have a septic system. I can't sell my house without having a Title V test. And if I pass the test, great. If I don't pass the test, I have to bring it completely up to code.
Or put it in escrow.
Yeah. And again, there's money on the table at that point, so I can let the next buyer take care of it because I escrowed the money. So that's the time and the place to deal with this. I think that's why my fear is that it's not good regulation. And the other thing is that most utilities are only going to pay, they're only going to do so much in affecting the change of converting people over to heat. And then they're just going to pay the penalty. And if the penalty is cheaper than the alternative, they're going to just pay the penalty. But the problem is nobody knows how effective any of this is going to be other than the only thing that's certain is it's going to jack up rates because the money's going to get penalized and it's going to go into rates. So that's a mortal law. Costs are going to go up. There's no information that we've seen anywhere that shows how effective it's going to be. So,
Pete, do you think that the IOUs are they're just being too complacent? They're just going ahead with it and they're passing the cost off to the customers and the DPUs happy that they're making that shift.
well, yeah, because they're going to recover the
Right, so
costs.
they can recover the cost, their costs are going through the roof, right? And the DPU or any state agency just says, hey, they're willing to do it and they're willing to do what we want, but they just pass it off. So they're not complaining. They don't care about the residents. They don't care about the cost, right? They may say it, but the costs keep going up and the DPU says all you have to do is tack it onto the bill and recover that money, right? And that's.
Are they pushing it? They're not pushing back.
I mean,
They do it.
I can't speak for National Grid, but when there was Clean Peak, we did write comments to the fact that showing how much this was going to cost in total over the life of the program and how much it was going to impact ratepayers. We did do an bill impact analysis. And
They do.
that fell on deaf ears.
But they do it and then they add it to the bill and the cost goes up, right?
I'm just saying, like, even if we scream and shout,
But
Nobody cares.
they have
Listens.
control over that to make them do it, right? And then they get a cost recovery model as well. So the municipals are a different model and we're not, but we get treated or brought in like the IOUs to be forced to do it. So like Pete said, is there a better way to accomplish the same thing without jumping in with the IOUs? Because the IOUs are just driving the cost up and they're giving in to the DPU or whatever agency is pushing them to make the change. And it's costing the ratepayers a lot of money, right? And is it fair to them? So it seems that we should explore other options and not jump into that same, that same way as the IOUs are doing it. I mean, we have the opportunity to make a change, don't have to jump on board. Right? I mean, if you're trying to accomplish.
have the option, yeah.
I mean,
An option.
the goal is the goal, and I don't think anybody disputes the goal, but I think the issue is at hand is that there's a better way to do it that doesn't add to utility bills. And unfortunately, I think the state, we're the easy, really easy target. They don't want to take the more challenging way to do it. They want to take the easy way to do it. So they just beat up utilities and just add it to your bill. By the way, in 5 years, when your bill is this instead of this, those damn utilities, I mean, it's all your fault.
Well, you look at an Eversource and National Grid bill, how it's all itemized. I mean, just the one they did the other day about what they charge. So the state wants them to do EV charging, right? So everyone gets assessed on their bill, a line item for EV charging.
Yeah.
I think Eversource is like $1.40 and National Grid is 39 cents, whatever the figures are, right? But it's itemized bill. And we were talking about it at my house and my wife's like, well, what about the elderly person that really cares about their bill and they don't have an EV vehicle? Well, do they pay that? I said, everybody pays it. So the state wants to get the money to build out the infrastructure, to give the rebates, to promote EV charging. And they just charge everybody and they put it on their bill. And maybe Eversource and National Grid pushes back a little bit, but they can only do so much because they want to get a rate increase. At the end of the day, it's not costing them anything. They're just, it's costing.
Their rate of return is based on their installed infrastructure.
It's costing the consumer money. It's not costing Eversource money really, because they get to
Yeah, it's
recover
a
that.
pass through.
It is.
And that pass-through started out as 2.75 cents. It's now over 4 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I mean, we have done, when I was in my other role, we did an analysis of all of the policy charges that are on top of supply and delivery. And they are a significant portion of the bill now. And they've only increased over time.
Right.
So.
And things like the clean heat standard and all these other things
Standard, I
are
don't,
continuing to add on.
Right?
or Clean Peak,
Not clean heat, yeah.
Clean Peak, Clean Energy Standard, there's
But clean heat, if it's added, we'll add another,
Yeah.
so.
so
The analysis I did, which I shared in an email, was that year one would be 0.5 cent to us.
mhm.
Based on the numbers that we'd be required to do. We would start out at 0.5 cent, but I haven't looked beyond year one to see what ultimately it would be.
Okay, well,
And that's assuming a full 20,000, like you're paying 100% of all conversions, correct?
No, we have to pay the penalty. I'm assuming we're gonna pay the penalty. That would
What
be,
if somebody converted with a less than penalty the way they are today?
then,
Because people are receiving incentives today that are not the
right, but
level of the penalty.
but once everybody knows that there's the penalty, the incentive is gonna match the penalty. It shouldn't be higher and it shouldn't be lower. It should be what the penalty is. So the incentive is gonna go up to $6,000. Because
If you
everybody,
move a customer with less than $6,000, you're gonna move a customer with less than
but
$6,000.
the marketplace is, yeah, but I mean, how many of those customers are left? We've already hit 200 of them, so. There's not gonna be that many more left that are gonna move without being forced to move.
Well, I'm just saying you're calculating the maximum bill impact, and we need to be clear about that,
Yeah,
right?
well, my gut says it's the minimum bill impact because that's year one. It only goes up from there.
True, but
Yeah.
you're saying in each year, you're calculating the maximum bill impact for that year. So we need to be clear, yeah.
Yeah, but unless there's a law change, there's not gonna be anything that incents people to do it besides the money. So why would they take any less than what you're paying in a penalty? They know it's public, it'll be public information, the fact that the municipal light department has to pay a $6,000 penalty if you don't convert, and they have to pay a $20,000 penalty if it's low income. And so that money's there, that's how much they're willing to pay for it, because if they weren't, they have to pay it anyway. So that's what we would be willing to pay. That's what we would have to be willing to pay, because that's the penalty. So.
Well, I would love to continue this discussion. But I would like Elton to be engaged as well. So, and I'd love to look at the analysis.
Yeah.
That you'll be doing. Could we table this for the December meeting?
Mhm.
Okay. And what about the large building energy reporting? We also.
That's a little bit different. Again, it's
Yeah.
local, it's a local control issue, but it's also a privacy issue,
data issue.
you know. And what we're saying in the letter and what we've said to the DEP all along is that at DOER is that we're willing to play, but the request should come from the building owner. The information should be provided by the building owner with the acceptance of all their tenants. And we're being asked to do something we're not allowed to do currently by law. If somebody wants to know what Jack's electric bill looks like, they can come over and ask all they want. They're not gonna see Jack's electric bill. Well, but he lives in a building that has 4 other services. Yeah, so what? You're not entitled to see what everybody's bill is. But if a building owner gets the permissions from everybody, what we're saying is that we'll provide the information, but we'll provide it to the owner. With the acceptance of all their tenants, we will provide that data. So it's not that we're not willing to provide it, but the mechanism is not right, you know? And I mean, we can't even get from the town data on who has electric vehicles, you know, so there's privacy issues. Victor is adamant, because we've asked, you know, can we just find out who has electric, so we can approach them about incentives and chargers and all that stuff, about time of use rates and all that stuff. And we can't get that information. But somehow we're making a change now, and all of a sudden we can provide, you know, people's private information. And again, it's becoming a mandate that will cost money. I mean, it's not going to be a half a cent, but it will cost administrative time and effort to do it. But what we would like to see happen is that the responsibility falls on the property owner, and we're there to help them, because we're a muni. If Joe owns a big building over there, we're gonna provide that. If Joe comes in with all his tenants, you know, security release or whatever, and we'll provide them the data. We'll figure out how to do it and we'll provide it. But so that's our concern, is the fact that, again, it's a mandate which will have cost to it, and then there's also a data security issue, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, we've had the conversation with them at the meme level that we're not opposed to providing it, but we think there's a better way, and we strongly feel that you know, if the state is going to make it a requirement of anybody that owns a building over 20,000 square feet to provide all the energy usage data, then that should fall to the landlord to get the approvals from all their tenants, and then provide it to us, and we'll figure out how to get the data to them. So.
Do you understand what the purpose of this large building reporting is in the first place? Like, wow, what are they doing with this information?
It's just the first step in a process, I'm assuming, to try to put requirements on usages at certain buildings. Yeah. My guess is that's where it's going. I mean, I'm only interpreting it based on the initial request.
Okay. And do you know how many of our customers fall under their?
We don't have an exact number yet, because the criteria hasn't been finalized of like what qualifies and what doesn't, so.
Do you have any ballpark?
We have draft
estimates?
regulate-
I mean, are we
we-
talking about like 30 or 10?
Probably in that range, yeah.
Okay.
But again, is it a pot, like, how would, like the head of the lake, it's 3 large buildings. Would only one of the 3 large buildings qualify? Is the property as a whole considered more than 20,000 square feet? So is it the entire complex, So some of that stuff has to be clarified,
Okay.
Okay. Well, would be, your assessment on what the impact would be for those draft regs would be helpful to bring to the table too, whatever,
Yeah.
And the privacy issues, concerns,
Mhm.
and where it's in conflict with, laws, it's state, but laws and regulations that state, whether it's coming from DPU or wherever, that we can't give out that information.
Yeah, that's a long held DPU principle. That
Yeah.
DPU doesn't want utilities giving out personal information. So.
Yeah, so, wherever those are applicable, the DPU, if there's a DPU, if there's a mass state law, or, where those come from, so.
And there's that whole series of unintended consequences from this. For example, we've had situations where landlord and tenants have been in dispute, and landlords separately metered, and landlords, because they're having an issue with the tenant for a different reason, not paying rent or something, they'll go to market, say, I need apartment 2 shut off. Well, no, apartment 2 is not in arrears. Apartment 2 is paying their bill, and whatever you have as a dispute with them, well, but those are kind of the unintended consequences. So now all that stuff comes into play. That's why the DPU has kind of regs on that stuff, because, he's using too much electricity. All those things come into play when you cross that line. Right now, it's simple for us. We say, no, we have a customer of record. Their customer of record is a current customer, and they're fine. And I'm sorry you own the building, but you can't shut off their electricity, But that's the kind of thing that could come out of this.
I'm assuming most of our large buildings are municipal buildings. Are they included?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have Audubon Road.
Right.
And again, does the definition include large, residential complexes, so.
Yeah. I was just thinking.
So can I ask one more question about these two? I'm sorry. So these 2 pieces of legislation are not in effect for IOUs at this point in time.
They are not legislation, they're regulations.
Sorry, regulations are not in effect for IOUs yet, but are being considered for IOUs. And then at the same time, the question is being asked whether to add MLPs into the regulation.
Well, they're trying to. So, but again, the language that's in, and it's talked about, and I think in the clean heat standard reg, is that it's for distribution companies. And they're trying to drag munis in with a separate line somewhere else in the regulation. It talks about dragging munis in. But what we note in the letter is that the regulation is defined for distribution companies, and traditionally MLPs have not been deemed in the definition as distribution companies.
But they're assuming that that munis are.
Well, yeah, because the DEP is taking a broad reading of it, and they think that their definition is fine, although there's years and years of case law that is counter to that. And we keep trying to point that out to them.
And do we know when these regulations are coming up for, they're drafts. They were drafts in 2023.
Right.
So it's been a year.
Yeah, there's been a lot of.
To Jack's question about schedule,
I think that, well, there's a draft schedule, but I think they're also facing a lot of pushback. So, and I think, so that's why,
But there are effectively no upcoming deadlines. That's what I can't figure out. Like, I don't see a schedule for.
I don't see, again, we had one of the draft regs on the large building stuff was supposed to be coming out before this meeting. So it was supposed to be at the end of the month. The draft regs, that's why the letter on the large building thing was coming out. we had had discussions about it at meme and we shared our concerns, and that's why the municipal caucus wrote that letter. For the first one was the large building, because we were expecting those regulations to be released. And I don't think all we've seen is a draft, so. So yeah, so the issues on both those things are two kind of different issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a question about the timing because, well, are we closed out on topic 2? Can we move to topic 1? So the letters that were sent from the chairs of the legislative caucus to the legislators were sent on October 17th, and then they were asking for sign on
By October.
yeah, which is a really quick turnaround.
Hmm.
You know why? I mean, you just mentioned that the large
Building one,
building
regs were due out.
regs were due out before the end of the month.
I believe that was, again, I wasn't directly involved with the group that did the meme caucus. It was Roto, it was Vinny, it was Kate, it was different people worked directly with the mass caucus chairs. So I wasn't directly involved in that. So the first I saw of the letter was the same time that, we shared it. They went through the drafting process for the letter. So it was a different group of people
Yeah.
than meme that were part of that.
Okay. Because it doesn't seem like a lot of time for anyone to,
Yeah, I asked Roto about that and he said that they wanted to get on record quickly because the clean heat standard's been going on since the spring or actually into last year. And they were dealing with it at the same time, but supposedly the large building regs were due out. So those were the two triggers for time.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, so on that, so what happened with myself and Tom was involved as well, is that legislators reached out to us directly, a legislator, and said, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And we were both on the same email, so. And we said, never heard of this before. So it was awkward in that I feel like we should know, right? These are big deals. I mean, I get some of the stuff that they work on is not a big deal, but these felt like big, and also they've been out there for a while. So it felt like there was plenty of time to loop in commissioners well before like the 17th or the 22nd. Like there wasn't any clear deadline. It had been out there forever. So I did get back to the legislator that reached out, and I just said, I don't think commissioners are aware of this. WMGLD commissioners are not aware of this, just so you know, that we have not even seen this at all. And then, followed up with you to get the information, obviously, so that I could try to piece together what had happened. That in my mind is not a good process. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight is, can we change that and what would change?
In some situations we can. In this case, we met on October 2nd. I saw the first draft of the letter on October 17th when it was already sent to the reps. It came from the caucus. So it wasn't written by meme. It was written by, with the input of meme, but it was written from the caucus chair, and the caucus chairs sent it to the representatives. So we didn't send it, but so that's why I was.
To agree that it's not a great process if, commissioners are not aware and then we get.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Again, this was coming. So one of my comments with Kate sent me a note, said, your board's not on board with this. I'm like, well, our board hasn't even talked about it because we haven't taken a vote on it. And I told her in my reply that this is coming from MEME, MWEC, and E&E and the Mass Caucus. It's coming from different groups. It's not coming from Wakefield Gas and Light. So directly, it's coming from larger groups. So.
Right, but we're members of MEME.
Right.
Yeah, and we pay
And we
me.
pay MEME to represent us, so you would think MEME could loop us in. I understand maybe you wouldn't be in that process, but MEME could let us know, right? I mean, this is where I'm struggling.
Yeah, it was a bit awkward. Them asking us our opinion on something that
You'd have heard of, yeah.
I hadn't heard of, like, I got the letters, I was like, what,
And not even having time,
and
and like, my only response could be, like, we haven't heard of this, like, because I have no time to do anything else, you know?
I'll share that with me that I've asked Bob why was it so fast? Why was October 17th and to the 22nd? They had to have everybody signed on before they issued the letters and all that. And his answer was that the clean heat standard thing's been going on for a while. And we need to get on the record and that the regs were due out on the large building. And that was his answer, so.
Well, so I guess, I mean, I feel like to communicate back to MEME, I think it would be helpful if we had a motion with specific language communicating back to MEME and we took a vote on it. I think that would be more impactful. So that is what I would propose we do tonight, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.
Well, I guess I wonder if it's been on the meme agenda. Often I look at the
I
meme.
have heard that the large building reporting was on the MEME agenda. I haven't confirmed it myself. I have not heard about the clean heat standard being on the agenda. Maybe it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I feel like it would be good to have it share. I mean, if they're sending it to legislators, why not just share it with us at that time?
Mhm.
Like the
Yeah,
moment
at
they
the
push the
same
send
time.
button, they
Yeah.
also
CC.
like at the very least. You know, so when we get questions back, we now know what has been shared. It's not like, well, we haven't even seen what this letter is, you know?
and to that, but from the clean heat standard, yes, it's been out there since 2023, and clearly it's a concern for MLPs that MEME share that with the board, that there's this thing that's out from the Mass DEP that could have significant impact to the MLPs. And so by proactively sharing that with all of the representative MLPs, I think is a better communication process.
Even if it's not a letter, it's the topic.
Well, I mean,
And
Anticipating.
Anticipating.
That this is coming, right? And we want to talk about it over the course of a year.
Yeah, when the Mass DEP, when it was looking like that MLPs were being injected into being required to conform to this, I think collectively, MEME, MWEC, E&E, and boards would want to provide feedback into these draft frameworks. This framework doesn't work for us. This, all the concerns that have kind of been voiced already. When that, I don't know when that language was trying to be put in. Was that, in January, February? Like we're in November now. And the first that we're kind of seeing that this MLPs, or at least this body, was when I got a letter from our representative that MEME had put out. So it just was kind of a blindside. And could have significant, to everyone's point, impacts on our control from a perspective.
Well, it's also that some of these things take time to understand, right? They're big pieces of regulation. So it's like, we want to do it over the course of a year and not over the course of 5 days, because that is not, it will take more time than 5 days to discuss it.
I think there is a big educational component and, we had a very good discussion tonight, but wouldn't MEME want to bring
Hmm.
commissioners aboard, along so that they
If I-
can.
I should have probably brought more information sooner as an agenda item on the cleaning thing. We did talk about it in April briefly because I had been on a meeting. And it hasn't been an agenda item since then. It probably could have been to cover more of the concern. But this all of a sudden rapidly accelerated this whole thing and that's what I put on Bob is like, we talked about this back in April when we met with them. We met in March and I shared it in April briefly, but then we haven't talked about it for a while. So why did it all of a sudden become an island on fire? And,
Right.
Again, all he said was that we got the caucus together and we talked about the large building thing and the clean heat standard, and then that's when the letters were drafted, so.
Okay,
Well, I could throw out one idea, that maybe we could, what's the name of the general secretary for MEM? Maybe we could have him on a call for one of our meetings at some, upcoming meeting and just kind of tell them what our concerns are and,
Executive secretary. The executive secretary, that's who it is now.
Oh.
It's Jane Parento. But I'll share with Jane too.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe Solicito is the chair right now. He's the president of MEM right now.
have we done that before? Have they come to our meeting?
No, we've had it, at WECA, obviously, been on several, but MEM never.
I can share with Joe.
Okay.
Joe is the president. So Jane Parento is the executive, so she's kind of the administrator. It's a higher level job than it used to be because we have her involved in, there's a lot more moving parts, so, but Joe's the president, right? He's the current president.
So if we were to make a request to MEM to communicate information, obviously it would just be for WMGLD, right? It wouldn't,
Yeah,
any like Reading or any other
no.
commission could
Right.
make a similar
Again,
request.
the one place that
But-
we're all different. We're all 40 different, and there's a lot of things that the 40 munis don't agree on.
Right,
The one place that we do agree is local control, like universally across the board.
yeah.
Any issue that we've taken up together has been on local control. And so it dates back to every battle we've fought for the past, since 1997. It's all about local control.
I mean, I hear what you're saying about the issue, but it's more about process and procedurally, like getting the information in a timely fashion so that we can provide input to our legislators if they ask, and we can deliberate and we can provide input back to. It's not that we disagree with that principle. I think that we all, I'll speak for myself, understand the importance of local control. But it's just, how can we improve the process? That's all.
Well,
Procedural question.
but there also may be substantive points that we could contribute to.
Yes,
I think, yes, local control is one aspect, but there may be in discussions with commissioners, you may hear more than just that.
because otherwise I feel like I'm falling down on the job. I'm not doing my job. If I'm not able to provide input in a timely fashion, so. So do you have a suggestion for,
I can put Joe on the agenda for December or January and invite him to.
okay,
Do we want to take a vote on that or?
Oh yeah, I'll take it as an action item. I don't know. if
I don't think we need a vote on
Yeah.
that. No,
Okay.
if that's the path that we decide to go, we don't need to vote on it.
And so would the action item just be for them to come in December so that we can tell them face to
Share the
face?
concern about
The concern
process.
about the process, okay, and what we can do to improve it,
Mhm.
communication.
And
Okay.
again, I could have shared it directly with you guys sooner. When I got it, I forwarded it right to the 3 reps because the time frame to get them on, to sign on, we were being told was we got on the 17th and they wanted them to sign on by the 22nd.
Right,
So that's why I forwarded it quickly to them.
right,
So I should have probably copied the rest of the board on it at the same time, so. But I also was told that they already had the letter, so they had already seen it. It was just, voicing the concerns of the community. Basically, what I said to all of them was,
But they,
but if you have questions about this, and you want to reach out to me, reach out. And so that's why that's what I said in my memo to
yeah,
them.
yeah. But that process was not really effective, at least with our commission, or our legislators, because only one of the three signed on.
Mhm.
So if we had a discussion, maybe all three of them would have signed on.
Well, I think because we can't effectively encourage them if we have not seen it, right? All we
Yeah.
can say is.
So we don't want
"Wait a
that to
minute."
happen again.
That's what we said. Wait a minute, please don't sign on to anything
Okay.
yet, because we don't know what you're talking about, right? I mean, I
Right,
think that's what
right.
I said. Hold on, what's going on? So if there's not coordination, then there's mass confusion, and I think there was confusion, right?
So they're not getting the outcome that they want.
We're not effective at advocating, as a body or an individual commissioner, if we're not in the, didn't know about it.
Okay. Any other concerns, questions on this topic? I think that's a good suggestion, Jack.
Okay.
We have one more item on the agenda under new business. The fiscal year 25 expense budget and
Capital budget.
calendar year 25 capital budget.
So the page is,
So are you doing okay?
Olivia's on
What's
deck.
yeah, Olivia's gonna present the budget.
Olivia has a presentation tonight.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep, she's gonna have to tap in. I mean,
Olivia, you're all set with your
Yeah,
presentation?
we got this?
No, listen, I just made my cup of tea. I'm ready to go.
All right, so there's there's actually four big pieces of paper, and they're in the way back piece of the way back piece of the packet. The large pieces. We'll go over the operating budgets first. There's one operating budget for electric, and one operating budget for gas. And then we'll move on to the capital budgets. Again, same thing. There's one capital budget for electric, one capital budget for gas. Okay, and embodied within the operating budgets is conservation budget, which we'll kind of pick that up as a separate topic. So, you got it, Jim? Good. So, the way that the budgets are prepared and lined up is if you kind of look at the middle, there's a couple of green columns which represent the actual and the budgeted for the most recent year. In this case, it's FY 24, which is what Kyle and Andrew were actually talking about the audit this evening. And then if you go to the left, it goes back 3 years, back to FY 2021. If you go to the right, it goes out 3 years and brings you to 2027. You good, Sharon?
yes, I'm good.
You
Thanks.
good? You sure?
Sorry.
I want to make sure we're quote unquote on the same page.
Yes.
All right.
This is the big one that unfolds.
Yeah, it's the big one. You didn't give her the big pages, Pete?
You're on the big one?
Oh, it's the same information. It's the same information.
Just in a readable
Yeah, just in a more readable,
format.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't get in there.
So, couple.
Maureen was on her way to Florida.
Here, you can use, I've got it
Okay,
electronically.
Oh, yeah, you got it right there, Jack. You don't have it? No, I have it. Okay.
Oh, just share.
Sharon.
Get it?
Sharon, do you want the big,
Right.
I've got it.
No, it's okay.
Oh, right here.
Right. Oh,
Yeah, electric and gas. Yeah, you're good, right? Okay. All right. So, like I said, I mean, if you look at the columns, green column is lined up in the middle. We go to the left, 3 years, brings you back to FY 2021. We go to the right 3 years and it brings you out to FY 2027. The one that we're focusing on, this evening is the budget for, obviously for 25. So when we line up, excuse me, when we line up, then that's the one that's in the gold column is the one that we're talking about for this evening. And what we do is, so Joe and I sit down with Dave and with Pete and, with the gas folks as well. And, we kind of look at all this, all the information for commodity costs, like we heard from Mark Roberts this evening. And also the same thing happens on the electric side for commodity costs, the forecast commodity cost, which is going to be, is that in December? Is that what coming?
How much next?
Okay, so OMIC is coming next month. But these are the cost projections from MWIC on a per megawatt hour basis for, FY 25, the commodity costs. That's how these were, derived. And I had it. So the cost per megawatt hour for FY 2025 actually went down slightly over excuse me, from FY 2024, by like $1 or $2, but it was offset by projected increased consumption, which is it's actually an ISO New England number. They're projecting anywhere between 2.5% and 3% increases just due to beneficial electrification over the next, as far as this budget goes, for 2025, 26, 27. So there's an escalator involved in the number of kilowatt hours that we're going to be projected to be selling due to electrification and so forth. So that's lined up here, and the revenue budget is both up a hair from FY 2024 and for to 2025, and also the commodity costs as well. And that's again, it's driven by increase in kWh sales, not necessarily the per megawatt hour price. And the notable things that you've kind of see how I've kind of put these in, those red little brackets there. So that's, I just talked about the, the energy revenues. And the other thing I wanted to call you attention to down there under this pension benefit and OPEB line, there's a little red box around there. That's, again, that's a budgeted standard. That's an estimate based on when we get the pension numbers from, like we heard about from Kyle and Andrew tonight from the auditors, when we get the pension numbers from the retirement board, and that'll be forthcoming. That's really all the highlights I had for, on the electric side. Let me jump into the gas side real quick on the operating budget, and then we're gonna bounce back.
Just Mark, we're expecting, on the power expense energy park, we're gonna start to accrue some costs, obviously.
That's on the capital,
But under power costs, you had a line.
Right. So as a line item, it's actually, it's in green there. So the power expense would actually be, debt service, and then all of the maintenance costs and operating costs to operate, the energy park. And then, the avoided cost is actually, I just put that in as a flat budget item. I backed it back out under the avoided cost. It's projected to be a win, but I budgeted, you know what I mean? But I budgeted right now as flat because it's an unknown.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there is a line item. There's a placeholder, Pete, thanks. There's a placeholder in there. I'm anticipating that the picture is going to be a little bit rosier than just flat budget. I mean, that's, yeah, so, but.
And that's because of the shared savings contract.
Correct.
We're gonna get revenues
Correct.
from the 50% of the use of the battery.
Yep.
So in summary, you're saying that you increased revenue based on projected increase in sales volume, but
KWH
not
sales.
cost.
Correct.
And all of your expenses you projected seems like they're kind of close to what the actual 2024 was.
Yeah. And there's an and in the out years, like 26, 27, what I do. And again, like what Mark Roberts has said is like, the further out you forecast, the fuzzier it gets. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just put in a 2.5% escalator going out as we go out to the right. And again, barring any unforeseen of those, oh my God, events that, global stuff that may or may not take place. Because you really can't, like at this point, with the goggles that I'm looking at it from, like you really can't budget for that in FY 20, like how do you budget for that in FY 2027? You know what I mean? you know, you deal with it as it kind of comes down the pike. And, yeah, and then on the gas side, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back to, so like I said, the conservation, budget is embedded in the electric budget. Let me just kind of go through the gas budget, real quick, because there's kind of the methodology, you know, really the same. And then we'll come back and I'm gonna have, Joe kind of chat about the conservation budget, because that's a significant line item on the electric side. But again, the gas side was put together with, you know, the same methodology. We're actually, the cost is actually is significantly down from budgeted from last year. But and it's up a little bit from the actual, but it's down significantly from the budgeted. And the cost to purchase gas, again, it's off, what, 2 point whatever million from, you know, the 9.1 we budgeted last year. So, that's where we're at. And we have the same, you know, the same thing with the pension number as well. It's still open.
But so you've got
We'll get
on the pension line, it's 360, which is the same as projected last year.
Yeah.
Even though it came in a lot lower.
It came in a lot lower, and that was, remember what he said about, like, why were we 112% funded? And it's
Right.
because of market returns or investment, whatever you want to call it, like, the investment actually, so if the market had a banner year,
Mhm.
right, it's gonna be an improvement.
So if we're overfunded, why are we still budgeting for such a high number?
So that's one of the things that we're actually gonna, again, it's a placeholder. So that's
Yep.
one of the things that we're going to, be bringing to you probably maybe in one of the spring meetings is, you know, we were gonna have a in-depth talk about that 112%. What's the right, where do we get that number? Do we want to target 105%? So there's a little cushion, and then we can actually take some money out of that. If, you know, if the investment returns are making money, we can take it out to help defray some of those costs. We can pay for it out of our current, you know what I mean?
The whole idea is have that fund established so it actually self-funds those charges.
Right,
So we have a we have a OPEB charge, which is healthcare for
right.
retirees. So we get a part of what we get billed by the town every year is that cost. So we're allowed to draw that out of the fund since it's fully funded. But we also have to decide what the right percentage is.
Where do we want to?
We want to be a little bit over 100% funded, you know.
That's a future. That's not tonight, but that we're gonna bring that back to you guys. Yeah. All right. All right, Joey, do you want to talk about, oh, back on the electric budget, the conservation line item. So it's probably three quarters of the way down. We're budgeting 751, 404.
Wow.
Yep.
So that's a
And
bit
the
more than projection, but a lot less than the actual number from last year.
Correct. So, and we have a workup on that, which Joe just put on the screen.
Sorry, can you say your comment again, Jack? It's a bit, what?
Well, yeah, so it's budgeted for 751,000,
This year.
which is more than last year's budget of 696, but it's still a lot less than our actual expenses.
Which is 843 and then 894 before that. So, and Joe, he's still with us. So
Sorry, where are you seeing
talk
the
about the
8?
solar demand.
I'm sorry, Mark, hold on. Oh, see the 843 is the actual? Oh, it's way down toward the bottom.
Three quarters of the way down the bottom.
Under A and G expenses. Above the
Oh,
open.
thank you. Sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to track what you're saying,
And then-
as you're saying it.
So Joe's
Okay.
pulled those numbers out of the big
Yes.
sheet. And he has some graphs and some other stuff so we can talk about it. And it's
Okay.
also in the board book.
Mhm.
It's in pages,
It's 141.
it starts at page 141 in the board book.
So I can let you guys get there.
Look, 140 pages this one.
I know, right?
You know why?
Thank
It really isn't 140 pages. When you put the audit report in there and I merged them
Something's
together.
not right.
So online, it's got the entire audit report. But I pulled it out because the book would have been
Oh.
thick, and they were already getting it separately in the
It
envelope.
doesn't feel like 100.
So, but it shows up here because online, the audit report is actually
Yeah.
in the board.
All right, so we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, so just similar to years prior, it's, you know, similar graphic shows the FY24 actual ECC expenses. So as you've seen and noted, the budget was around $700,000. We definitely exceeded that. The real big player in that was the solar. So this, if you remember, the solar went down January 1 of this past year. It went from the rebate that we were giving went down from the 80 cents per watt to, I mean, it went down from the $1.20 a watt to the 80 cents per watt. And so we anticipated this would impact quicker than it really did. But one unanticipated consequence of that change, we did a good job explaining it to people and putting it out on the website and on Facebook and things like that. So there was a huge influx of people actually kind of going quicker along the process. Sometimes there's a little bit of lag as far as the process goes. It takes people months and months to kind of go through this, but I think a lot of people were afraid that if they didn't get certain things done, that they weren't going to get that $1.20. So there was a lot in the bullpen that were ready to come in. And one of the crazy numbers about that is after the announcement, the rebates that were processed were from November to fiscal year end were about $180,000. So that was way more than we could have expected. And most of that $180,000 was at that old the $1.20 a watt, just because it usually takes months. So the natural people who were going to get the rebate processed at that time were still there, and then also people that were in the backlog, they all jumped in, and you know that's kind of what we saw about it. There was tons of rebates processed from basically the second half of the year that inflated that number.
That goes to explain what Jack was asking, which is basically why are you budgeting 750 if you spend 843? And again, it's the lag of that $1.20 rebate floating into the cycle.
Well,
So that was
what was the deadline to get your the solar
They
rebate?
had to sign up by the end of the calendar year.
Calendar.
And so then those some of them were processed pretty quickly, but as long as they got to a certain point in the process, they were allowed to do it into 24 also. So they've been, installing these. So we didn't account for the lag, basically.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer for some people to do it. And so everybody, I think they wanted to make sure that they locked in that $1.20. So they came out, and then even people maybe that were thinking about solar, but then they saw that difference and then they kind of jumped on that too. So it's those two kind of groups of people I think jammed in the last 6 or 7 months or so, after the announcement. So. And so we felt that effects kind of going into the fiscal year end. So that's kind of that line item really is the driver of pretty much all the difference between budgeted and expected. I think we budgeted a little over 100,000. So it was a big difference, and that's pretty much the difference between what was spent. I mean, there's little ups and downs in some of the other items, but those were more reasonable. It really was just that solar impact that that I don't think we could have really anticipated. Um, so
Well, now
on
we know.
next,
Well,
What's
and we didn't change the rate this year, so that's why we kept the
If
number.
we want to get people to participate, we just have to drop.
Yeah.
exactly.
Trying to change it.
Threatened to drop it.
Slow it down when you don't have to go up. They stop.
You better get your heat pump rebate now, or it's going down.
Later.
Yeah, so the next page it's a graphic we show every year as well, which is I find it one of the more interesting graphs. I always like putting this one together because it shows the different, what rebates are the most popular this year, and you get to see it against the prior 2 years. You can see the steady growth in the heat pump rebates. Some things stay steady, some things go down and up. Certain lawn equipment, lawnmowers maybe not as popular this year. I don't, who knows why, but leaf blowers a little bit higher. So that's kind of it's kind of interesting to see that, and then seeing it in the dollars portion down on the right, the chart down the right, which kind of talks to the chart above. Um, you can see that heat pumps, that's, besides the solar, which we already kind of talked about, the heat pumps are the biggest, kind of the biggest area, followed by the insulation and windows. Those are usually the biggest items. I mean, some of the other appliances, as far as the amount of rebates that get processed, you'll see it right under that chart. You'll see for the past few years, it's up to, 774 this year. And a lot of those smaller items contribute ever since we added the lawnmower, the lawn equipment and things in the snow blower. People have taken advantage of those a lot. Those are akin to the appliances where there's tons of those that get processed. The dollar amounts are a lot lower impact than those two big items, the insulation and the heat pumps. But I think that's where we want most of the money to go. Some of the, since we've moved away from heating systems, things like that, we want to shift towards insulation and heat pumps and getting those together as we release that bundle earlier this year. So that's kind of the direction that we're going. So here's kind of just the look at, some of the similar information. Here's just kind of the breakdown of looking at the actuals for last year and then, each line of the budget for this year. So you notice that the solar, we dropped by just about 100,000. And that's due to, I think, the influx of solar mixed with the influx of solar from last year really inflated that number. We're still going to keep it up. We're not going to drop it below that, I think, because, you don't know exactly where it's going to go. There might still be people that kind of come through. So we want to keep that reasonable, but keep it up there for now. Some of the other ones, like a boat, that's just a contractual increase. It can go a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on how many times our customers use them and things of that nature. The rebates and incentives, it's similar growth to years, trends from years past. Not a huge increase, but enough. Same with the MWIC programs are going to go up a certain amount. So that's kind of in line with signing the new year's increases and things like that. Again, those can vary, depends on how many energy audits and things of that nature. But those usually stay within a reasonable range of what we budget for. Then EV programs have come down just a little bit. So we've restructured with Voltrek. We used to pay them kind of like an admin monthly fee, but I find that we weren't using them. We didn't use them as much. I mean, there's some one-off instances where we might link them up with a customer, kind of try to do a sit down and things like that. But for the amount of times that was happening, I think there was more dollars going out of the door than was worth it. So we kind of negotiated with them that we can still call them up and they can help our customers, but they'll be billed at a rate for the time that they're actually putting in instead of having that placeholder amount that's in the monthly. So that I think and in there too is also the time of use upgrades and as well as EV charger rebates and things like that. We've had, I think, a handful of the time of use upgrades come through, 3, 4, 5, maybe. Chargers still, 20s, 30s, somewhere in that range. Could be a little bit less, but I think it's around that. So the last item, just everything else is, we recently signed, we're a sponsor for the Beneficial Electric League, and they are a nonprofit organization that helps municipalities electrify. And one of the things they helped us do was apply for a grant, a 401(d) grant, which I think I talked about at the last meeting, but they helped us kind of reach the finish line on that application for certain aspects of the energy park. So they've been super helpful, and we look forward to continuing to work with them. So that's a $5,000 a year fee, but if all the work they've done already would have cost us, if we had hired somebody out, would have cost much more than the 5,000. I think they have a mission and they want to see people electrify, and they're very smart people over there, have a lot of experience. So So with that, the total budget is around 750,000, and that would be a slight increase to the residential ECC, up to 7.5 tenths of a cent, which would be an impact of about $4.50, per residential customer, the average residential customer, maybe $5, using the 750 kilowatt hours, kind of standard each month. The last piece is the commercial revenue side. So it works a little bit differently on the commercial side, which is it's a flat rate depending on their customer class. And so the proposed increase is this, this top one commercial light used to be $3. This one used to be 15, so now it's 20. The municipal light used to be 1, now it's 3. And municipal power, in line with the commercial power, has gone from 15 up to the 20. And so this will be an increase of roughly 50,000 on the commercial side. We think, with us kind of shifting towards trying to approach some of our large gas customers and things like that in the near future, it's good to start beefing up this side a little bit in anticipation of some of those things. So that's kind of
So is the
That's-
commercial charged as a flat monthly rate, or is it $1 per kWh?
No, it's a flat rate.
It is, okay. Oh, I don't think I was aware of that.
Well, so wait a minute. So commercial light, what do you say, 5 is the proposed new rate? So it's $60 a year?
Yeah, so it's different
It used to be
classes.
36 and now it's going to be 60. It's kind of a big increase, 50% increase.
No, it's currently 15. They're adding 5 to it to make it 20, so it's a 25% increase.
They're not showing what the previous monthly rate
Yeah,
was.
it used to
Just
be-
the increase.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
15.
it used to be 15 and now it's going to be 5. That's a.
No, now it's gonna be 20.
20
No, it says 5.
hour.
That's commercial.
Additional cost.
I'm
Commercial
talking
light.
commercial light.
Commercial light was 3.
It was 3 and now it's 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I said. Yeah, so it was 36, now it's 60. That's a big percentage.
Sorry, where are we getting the 36 and 60?
Well, it used to be 3. It
$3 is
was $36 a year.
Oh, I see.
And now it's gonna be 5 for $60 a year.
Correct.
So are these, you
Yeah, I would
guys
say
beefing
that
up for the
as a-
future, but are these
Go ahead.
actually funds that you think we will spend?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
2025?
yes, because again, one of the things we're doing is one of our goals is to reduce the gas peak. So we're gonna be, part of Olivia's new role is to engage our largest customers and come, it's a lot more one-on-one type of work with engineering and design firms. I mean, some of the places the money's already been spent. I mean, some of this money was used for the audits for the 2 schools. Some of this money is going to be used for the Galvin Solar project. So there's lots of places that this money is being spent. So this is
Water department, so.
Huh?
Water department, so.
Water department solar on the 2 roofs there. And we've done a lot. We're doing a lot more. We didn't used to do small commercial audits. We're doing a lot more of those now. So that's where this money's going.
The commercial energy efficiency programs are much more expensive than the residential.
They're not cooking.
So, you look at the $3 versus $5 and the percentage seems high. But the cost to do commercial
Yeah.
grades energy efficiency is a lot higher.
Yeah, thank you, because that's what I was wondering, like, so
Yeah.
we've seen the actual budget overall. And how that's changed, but can we separate the commercial from the residential? Because in other words, I'm wondering I'd like to know how much we've been spending for the last few years on the commercial.
Like I said, the places we've spent the money this past year, we spent the audits cost, I forget how much they cost, and Joe would probably know. Plus, we've done a handful of commercial audits. Olivia was just working with Brothers. I mean, I don't
Do
think,
some with the housing authority too?
yep. did audits at the housing authority.
And they're very prescriptive, so they're very.
Yeah, that's the thing, it's all.
It's like I get a team that goes over there to look at it and.
Yeah.
And then this, like, even if we did solar, right, so we want to promote solar as well, so. You do like the water and sewer building or the water department building, that those systems are much larger. You convert a gas system to electric, it's huge money. So, and I think to Pete's point, I mean, Olivia, when we have this grow, we can now offer more programs to commercial customers too. So we need to develop a pool of money so we have it available to the customers. I mean, one or two projects may.
True up most.
And take a chunk of that money out right away.
I mean, the rebate for the Galvin Solar is gonna be over $300,000. I mean,
Yeah.
out of pockets to
Yeah.
total rebates over three.
I guess is your concern, Jack, that the commercial customers are not getting a big enough benefit because they're paying more?
Well,
Into the system.
no, I guess I'm just thinking about, I just think that the 50% increase is huge, but then again, $60 a year, what's the average commercial power customer paying in revenues for the year?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, what's the bill impact here? I mean, I'm sure it's very small. but-
Percentage wise on the bill.
Yeah, percentage wise, yeah.
It's a flat rate for them, basically, right? I mean,
Right.
more or less, so,
Right, but is it like 1% of their?
yeah,
revenue?
it's a small, very, very small.
So, Jack, where are you getting the 50% increase?
Yeah,
Well, because it says right at the top in green, it says $50,000 increase.
Oh, 50, I thought you said 50%.
It is, because because now it's gonna be 154,000, what it used to be 100,000.
Okay.
The total.
Oh.
Oh, so I'm sorry, I was confused. I thought you were saying
Yeah.
50% increase from the monthly rate. But now I understand. what you're saying.
can you provide a breakdown of how, like, similar to the residential, like how the 154, I think you mentioned some of it is audits, right? And some of it is it all audits or
No,
are there
it's,
pieces?
no, we're trying to create a pot of money that we can do prescriptive.
Yep.
Stuff as well. But again, because it's more prescriptive and we don't have a lot of history of data, we do need a little bit of a pot of money, but the money that we've taken in so far on the commercial side has all been spent.
Yep.
So, and then some. And so we're, again, the solar stuff was running higher, but, but we know we're gonna be doing more prescriptive stuff, so beyond just the audits, whatever, but again, they're customized, if we go to a building and lighting is the answer, or heating, whatever it is, as we try to look at these larger customers, how can we work with them to, again, the first goal is try to get them off the gas peak.
Mhm.
So that, to do that, that's gonna require us dollars.
I mean, right now, we're
We
working
get a-
with schools. We're working with 2 schools to do that, right? So this, and none of this is a pilot program by any means, but we're digging into what they're doing on the gas and what their system's like. We're using the CET to come out and evaluate it, come up with a plan, look at the gas reduction and how much that'll cost. So we're doing that with and it's a huge focus. Takes a lot of time, a lot of effort.
But
to do
then
that with
to
others.
figure out what we can give them
Right.
for a rebate, that we need to
Exactly,
come up with a mechanism to do that, and it's gonna be varied by
right.
customer.
So then
We need a
they'll-
budget to, but again, being able to count the number of lawnmower rebates we're gonna give is a lot easier than figuring out prescriptive numbers. So we're setting a budget, which we think is a reasonable number, and we're gonna have to tailor our prescriptive responses to it.
And then it's great, just I think the ask is to, generate, whether it's like slide 142 and 140, the pie chart or the, line chart. Or even a table of, we did commercial audits, 5 of them cost X dollars. And then the prescriptive, we gave rebates, 3 rebates for commercial lighting, 3 rebates for
So
commercial,
breakdown.
whatever we've done, where the money has been spent.
Yeah,
Would be, I really appreciate the data that we get for the residential. I think we're just looking for that same data on the commercial side, however.
The only
it's
issue
easiest to.
going
So
on now.
this is relatively new, we've only,
Help the program.
Okay.
we're only this is only the 3rd year we've even had a commercial. So,
So it hasn't, so right now Olivia is going to be focused on it. Joe's been very focused on it as well. And we're developing, using just this year alone, we hired CET to come in and start to do directly working for us to do our commercial audits, right? So we're working with them to understand it. We go out with a customer to talk to the customer, to do the walkthrough. So, when we do that, it's significant. So then we can capture that information on what they decide to do. And we can.
I think to answer
Yeah.
Tom's question, we don't have a ton of data yet.
Okay, no, but
We'll keep accumulating.
Yeah, we
But
will.
yeah, but-
As we go through this process,
Yeah.
we'll be able to report on how each of those rebates are going. Because they take a significant effort. It's like Pete said, it's not like someone signs up and wants to get a battery powered tool. So it's much more comprehensive. And there's not a lot of customers, there's a significant number, but and they won't all take advantage of it at once.
But as we go forward, we can start providing the data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
are you proposing that we vote to increase the commercial and the residential?
usually what we do is we have you vote for the budgets as a whole, and those budget numbers are in so by voting for the expense budget, those line items are carried in those budgets. That's what we've done for the past several years. So we're giving you background information that talks about the energy conservation stuff, but rather than have to vote for specifically that you're voting, if you're voting for the budget as a whole, then you're voting for the.
That included, yeah. So I guess I would just make another, an observation. I mean, I'm not sure that we need any additional revenues to cover this, because when you think about it, we made $6 million more than we projected last year. And that carries all the way down to net income. We made over $7.5 million of net income last year. And when you compare that to other years, 400,000, 600,000, 1.4, I mean, that's why that's why the ratios look so good, because we're.
Right.
Because they've been horrible in years past.
Right, we had to recover.
True.
The plan is to not recover $7 million this year.
Right.
That's why the rates are lower in our.
We've gone down we've gone down over 20% on the rates, yeah.
Yeah, but I just don't know why we need to increase any rates if we have,
Well, because
sitting on $7.5 million of cash from last year.
we're not sitting on.
We're not.
We were 3 million negative the year before, so.
No, we were 1.3 positive. It's right here. You made 1.4 the year before. We did a
No,
little.
but the cash,
So on all the budgets, you know what I mean?
They're not additive, they're rolling, are you saying they roll over year to year, right?
So the cash, the income closes out closes out every year.
Right.
It's not cumulative.
Mhm.
It closes out to equity. So, and we were in, one of the things that they mentioned in the presentation is up until this year. So last year, we had a 2-point-something million deficit. So we were in the hole that much. Okay. So we crawled out of it and we had a $3 million surplus or something like that. I forget what the. Yeah. So we were in a deficit. The deficit position is in fact cumulative. That's this slide right here. So up until last year, we were running in the negative deficit of 2.7 million. And this year, FY24 in June, $3.8 million positive.
that's the 7 million.
So it's a little.
That was to get us out of the cash hole. Now we're trying to right size the rates a little bit to stay.
We're not in panic mode anymore.
Right. We're not.
Definitely.
Mark has said we have no money, a lot less this year.
So, yeah, and that was one of our goals, was to get get some working cash, as well, because I mean, like anybody knows, it's, if you're running a small business or a household or whatever, it's, I mean, just constant juggling. I mean, that's what I did for the last, recent history, is just juggle this, juggle. Can't pay that one right now. Can't pay that one. You know what I mean? It's, it's difficult to run a $50 million business that way. It really is. So.
What I think you make a good point is, as like energy revenue increases, right? Especially on the electricity side. Depending on what investments you need to make in the system. Right, you are seeing more sales coming in, right? For the same maintenance of the similar system, right? Year over year.
Yeah,
So, you know, you can see impact on rates from that.
But it's also a different bucket of money. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
It's shifting from one charge to, right, one charge to another, right? So you might have,
We've, since what, 2019 or 20, we've tried to be much more specific about where these charges go. And, you know, these programs are being funded by that charge, and we want to keep all that in that bucket.
so is it fair for me to just divide 155,000 by the $12 million commercial revenue to get the bill impact?
say it again, 155,000 on the,
Yeah, your budget is 155,000, right, commercial, divided by $12 million in projected revenue.
so this commercial right here,
Mhm.
the 12,410, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
That's actually the small commercial and the large, right? Because there's two,
okay.
and there's also municipal in there.
Oh, and municipal, I had to add that in, yeah, so
Yeah.
it would be 12, so it's $14 million. So it's 155 divided by 14 million, is that the bill impact?
So give or take, yep,
Okay.
yep. 1%, right? A hair above. 1%.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's 1.2%.
But again, those are, you know, larger ticket items than a $25
Yep.
leaf blower or whatever. you know.
Right.
I guess your question is, not, should we, increase the budget, but for the to help fund the commercial energy efficiency, programming, but, do we need to because of the
Yeah, but it makes,
cash position that we're in today? Is
right,
that your
yeah,
question?
yes, more or less. But it does make sense that the revenue should match the expenses, and so if those are the projected expenses. That's where that money is supposed to be recovered from, is through that
Mhm.
charge. And if
Mhm.
it's only 1% after the increase, that means,
Yeah.
you know. So it's
It's
tiny.
1.1% after, and it was 0.9 before.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I guess I'm okay with it. I guess the only other thing that, I mean, I know it's a small amount, it's just whenever you increase the rate, I don't know. It seems to me that you should notify customers that you might be raising their rate, even if it's this tiny piece, but.
Well, the way this rate would. Yeah,
This is
I mean, we-
charge.
it's a component
Yeah.
of the rate.
And when we filed this rate change with the DPU, part of the setting it was that the board sets this rate each year, that it's written in that way. It's
Yeah.
Right in the tariff, yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think there's benefits that the 0.05 of a cent that we're adding.
Benefits outweigh the.
I think the benefits, again, one of our goals is to cut this gas peak, and part of the role we're asking Olivia to play is to help us do that.
For the larger.
But
customers.
with a place that we can try to spend some of that money, you know, and use that money to effectively.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, the only other thing I just wanted to raise, and this is going back to the residential energy efficiency, is just that it looks like the average incentive for installation is like $1,000 a project. And for mini split and heat pumps, it's like $1,400. So those are not that high, actually, to date.
Well, I think part of it is because there's two things. I think both of them scale off of how big the project would be. So because it's based on a per ton, if somebody, you know, in some cases people aren't replacing their whole, you know, system. So maybe it's a 1-ton system. So they're just getting $500. And then same with insulation, maybe it's just the attic, or maybe it's the basement, and then maybe it's 50% of the costs up to 1,500 on the insulation, unless you bundle it with the heat pump. And then those projects, a lot of times we see that people, when they take advantage of those ones, those are the bigger projects, and where we're paying out rebates close to $5,000, $4,000. And there's a handful of people who have started to trickle in on a debt, doing those ones.
Yeah, Jen, it's
Yep.
2,000, capped at 2,500 per ton straight, and that's what the 750 if insulation capped at 3,000, and then 1,000 per ton capped at 5,000 if doing the
Yeah, these projects are
possible.
on average lower than that. Yeah, smaller.
And so one of the things we're doing, we're having a BOD come in and do at the end of this month, I think it's November 20th. We're gonna kind of reach out to people on the normal channels about it, but it's gonna be they're gonna come in and kind of host a heat pumps 101 type presentation. And then there's gonna be a few slides in there that go over the kind of the differences between what it used to be as far as the heat pump incentives, and then why you might want to look at one of the other two categories and how that functions and what you need to do with it. I mean, the information's on the website, but I think sometimes it's good to give people that kind of thorough look at it. So I'll be explaining those slides within that kind of 30 to 45-minute presentation.
And then in the spring, we're talking about doing like a mini trade show type event.
Great. Can you keep us posted on the dates so that we can sit in if you want to?
Yeah,
That would be
definitely.
great. Yeah, and do you track, I'm sure you have the tracking too on the sizes of the different projects. Be good at
Yep.
some point to kind of see which ones, what proportion of this you think are like whole home jobs. And I know that number is probably relatively small, but just curious.
Yeah, I can see a BOD keeps those statistics, I believe. I have one that they used to do where it was actually pretty cool. They showed like the percentages of, this one, was in the 95 to 100% or plus category. This one's in the 70%. So I'll check in with them, because that used to be on their Q&A form. I think that's how they figured it out. I'll see if they still do something comprehensive like that. If not, we do have all the sizes of all the projects. And it's something where we could go in and take a look. I mean, there's not, because we've done, what is over 200, 300, we could pick some of the latest ones and go back into those ones. And if we had to look at them individually, that I think that could be a value added project, even if a BOD doesn't have that, that chart that they once provided a couple of years ago.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Are you seeing a good response to that, the heat pump insulation, the added incentives? Like, is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still, I think with presenting it and trying to put it out there, I think more people may take advantage of it. I think anyone who's done it is happy that they get, that they get a little extra. And I think it does, to me, it's one of those things where I think some of the appliance rebates that we give, I mean, people probably would have got new appliances anyway. I think this bundle, for anyone who does it, I mean, maybe they would have done insulation too, but I'd like to think that it actually incentivizes people to take a look at their insulation and do it, instead of where like some of the lower end rebates, people are probably going to get a dishwasher or a fridge anyway, and it's a nice little bonus that they put an Energy Star in, and they get a little bit of a rebate from us. So
Okay.
We usually vote the expense budget.
So are we ready? Take a vote?
Well, we didn't even get to the capital budget.
No, we vote the expense budget and we do the capital budget.
Oh, we're doing that separately?
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion
Okay,
that we accept the budget as proposed.
the expense budget,
Expense budget.
The expense, yep.
fiscal year 2024 expense budget.
Yes, the electric and gas budgets for fiscal year 2025, yes.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Capital, this is the big sheet version.
Thank you.
You want to copy the big sheet, Jack?
No, I have them all, yeah.
You good?
Yeah, this is good.
Okay. First up.
Yes.
Gas. Got it, Jen? Okay. So, first up is the gas. The green, sweeps all the way across are the grant funded, grant funded streets. And we have, up the top, we have, those three are actually kind of hangovers from the previous grant. Well, the current grant, I should say.
Yeah.
The next grant, the future grant, is down, which says FY 24 grant project, was it 2, 4, 6 streets down there? Okay, and where does that bring us? Does that get rid of all the cast iron, you said?
Cast iron will already be gone after this project. the
Okay.
current one.
Yeah.
This brings us, brings it another couple miles off of our bare steel.
Yeah, still, okay.
And part of this was some more leak prone areas. So we do a plan, a DIMP plan, it's called Distribution Integrity Management Plan. And one of the things that we identify on that is what our leak history is and what areas are having worse leak. So this section of town had a higher leak rate. So that helped the scoring of the grant as well. Because bare steel is bare steel across the board, and it's not the best pipe to have in the ground, but there's places that it's worse than others. And so when we filed for this grant, we actually applied for 2.7. Part of it wasn't approved, but this part was, and part of the driver was its leak history. So it helped with that. So I think it scored a little higher on their grading based on these streets needing to get replaced.
Okay. So these are all the streets, and regulators are done. I mean, we talked about that, it's been 2 years that all the regulators are done, right? Yeah. And
We are carrying a little money in there because of the new regulations that have just come down that took effect in October. These regulations that took effect came out of Merrimack Valley from 5 years ago. However, we had already, I've updated the board several times. We had already been taking actions that we knew at a macro level what was coming. So that's why we replaced all those regulators. We did one a year for 4 years. We replaced all the existing regulators. And then the requirements for the regulators, they're adding a third level of protection on the regulator that we built our regulator to accept it. We were anticipating it, but we're carrying the $100,000 in 26 and 27 to upgrade the existing brand new regulators. We have to basically, put the extra piece of equipment in to bring them fully compliant with the new changes. So that's why we're carrying some money in those years.
I'm sorry, you're carrying 100,000 for regulators? I see 100,000 for portable LNG, but not for the regulator.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Either.
The portable LNG is just in case we need to keep our engineering drawings up. There should be money, maybe he carried it somewhere else.
Well, there's new service installs of 100.
Yeah, he might have carried it in that. There's one modification we need to make, and so. Yeah, so the 100,000 for the regulators, for the portable LNG is to keep our drawing and our we had, Sharon, we had portable LNG for a few years, maybe 4 years back to cover the peak, and there's drawings and permits and all that stuff that we have on, if we do ever need to go back to it, we want to keep that stuff up to date.
I see.
We can modify the regulator upgrades. What did you want to carry for that?
We talked about it. So you must have
I know, I don't know.
Who's he that we're referring to?
That's Henry Brown.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It would be in that, I mean, the emergent main replacement jumped way up in
Yeah.
26 and 27.
I think that's where he probably carried it in there
Yeah,
with the mains.
Well, I'm confused about that. Why, because on that line for emergent main replacement,
Yeah.
in the budgeted column, it says 50,000 instead of 350,000. Wait, so I'm not, wait,
Oh,
is
yeah,
that supposed to add up?
Yeah,
Because even
it
though,
is, it's supposed to.
that doesn't add up. Yeah.
because the subtotal gas mains above that, that doesn't add up either.
Yeah.
That should be 1.5 instead of 1.1.
No, because I back out the grant funding.
Oh, oh, wait.
Yeah, you back out the grant funding.
Oh, okay, so that's not, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
That money gets reimbursed.
Okay.
But that, you're right, that should be 350, not 50. That's correct, Jack.
Oh, I know where I think you carried some of that.
So on the gold, where it says 50, that should be 350.
Yeah,
You're adding
it's
the
300.
50,000 for material and 300,000 for contractor. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that should sum across.
Should have been up a line. Oh, it should have been.
No, it just it needs to sum to the right into the gold column.
Yeah, I know he carried it. He carried it in on the expense side because it's modifying an existing. And so he carried it in distribution operation expenses.
Oh.
And is that more engineering type stuff, not necessarily
Yeah, I mean,
a physical, no one's putting a wrench on anything and changing it?
it's just a component, yeah.
Good.
All right, so I will make that change to 350.
So then there's no change to the regulator upgrades.
Correct,
No.
Okay,
carried it
okay.
elsewhere.
Okay,
Carried it as an expense item.
all right.
I need to help you with spreadsheets.
I know, right? All right, we go with the gas side?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is all Dave's stuff. Yeah, blame Dave. No, it's the same thing. These are, the projects are lined up under the, under the line, under the line division. So the energy park again in green, okay? In green down the bottom there. These are the projected outflows and it's gonna be debt financed. So as far as like for the capital budget, it has, it should be flat funded. There will be, going forward, there may be some of the, like some stuff, like, actually, we really don't capitalize, like some of the tree plantings and stuff, we don't put that in the capital budget, but I'm just thinking like that's, like there are a couple of oddball
Be
items.
like the switches.
Right.
That aren't huge. So lower cost items,
Yeah.
especially with the energy.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like trees and stuff, but anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no real, it doesn't really impact, the capital budget.
Mhm.
And that's total.
Because it's gonna be debt financed.
Right.
And that's kind of what that tells us in green. And I don't know, Dave, did you want to comment on any of this
No,
stuff?
I mean, I can just quickly go down it. Quantum powered, it's for that what Pete mentioned earlier on the section from the development over to North Ave. We're funding for that in 25. And then we're doing and then the next line is 26. That's the overhead to underground conversion towards the Lowell Street end. Farm Hunt is out there in 26 for capital for upgrading some underground work and some overhead on Nahant Street associated with the school to try to underground some of that, not underground, but clean up that area along Farm in front of the high school. System improvements to the normal underground feeders. We have 2 feeders that we're going to focus on. We have 1/3 of 1380 that we plan on doing, and then 0012 is the feed to the high school park and the vocational school, so we want to upgrade that. We have some street lighting, pole replacements because our poles are aging and we've done some inspections. Then pushed out some solar on WMGLD buildings like Wakefield Ave out in the future. We don't have any 4 kV to 13 conversion. Burns Park, we have some money on that. That's actually the park itself. And then as Mark pointed out, the energy park funding. Then the substations, we don't really have any major projects in the substations planned in 2025. We just have routine testing. And then that's it. So it's what's consuming our time and is going to be anything associated with the energy park, the high school and the vocational school.
Yeah. And then the information technology budget, that's Jeff's, but is Jeff coming in next month?
Yes.
Okay. So he'll be in, Jeff will be in next month. That's flat funded, level funded, whatever you want to call it from last year, but he's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve that you'll hear about next month. And facilities, so the vehicles, we had a log jam. I don't know what you want to call it, but so we're carrying forward 600K in vehicles due to a dump truck that never materialized last year and another hybrid bucket truck that never materialized last year. Plus, we have another hybrid bucket truck on order for this year. So presumably, we're getting this year's hybrid bucket truck and last year's hybrid bucket truck.
Next year.
Right. When
25.
I say this year, I mean, yeah, the budgeted year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that accounts for the increase in,
Vehicle.
million dollars worth of vehicles. So,
So basically, we were supposed to get a dump truck and a bucket truck in 2024. Neither one is gonna show up till 2025, but we stayed on cycle to order
yeah.
bucket that we would have ordered in
Yeah.
25.
was the-
The order's going in, so we're potentially buying 2 buckets and a dump this coming year.
Right.
Did that throw off kind of at least for the buckets, like, we're kind of on a rotational.
Well,
Because we're.
the second one won't come to, the
Oh,
first
we're
one's
ordering
due-
it.
Yeah.
we're-
Yeah, okay,
The
got it.
first one's due in by March. We're hoping that the one we're ordering now will be in by the end of next year.
Gotcha, okay.
Oh, okay.
We do think that the supply chain stuff is getting a little, the lead time for the first, we were getting 2026 lead times, now it's back into 2025 lead times. So the mechanism is getting a little bit better. It's still not perfect, but it's better than it was.
And I have 2026 as a buy year for purchasing a bucket truck. There's no bucket truck, and then we're gonna purchase another bucket truck. The next one would be in 2027. So we'll have 2 this year, 2 in 2025, skip 26, and 1 more in 2027. Along with another gas truck.
So
Service,
I call it the urban assault, big gas truck that you see driving around.
big box truck, yeah.
The big box truck that it's on the model actually that National Grid uses.
Yeah.
They're gas street. trucks. So that will be due for replacement in 27.
Yeah.
So that's what we're saying.
So these run like $300,000 basically.
Oh, yeah, well, the
Roughly.
new buckets are more like, yeah, they're going up.
Really
The
mad.
next one might even be 400,000.
Oh, it's so expensive.
It used to be 175.
Then I went to 250 and off they go. Crazy.
Yeah, you could definitely get them under 200 grand.
Yeah.
And now they're. But again, we are paying a little bit of a premium for the hybrid.
Yep.
Well,
So the Wakefield Solar is 500,000 for
We want to
Wakefield.
put battery, we're looking at battery too.
Oh, you are? Okay, I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
I mean, a combination of battery and solar.
okay.
That's a Wakefield Ave.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't think that roof is that big, right? So.
Yeah, no, we're looking at where the switchgear was, the concrete slab. Put some batteries there, and then we're looking at batteries that are that have a low noise output for the HVAC. They use heat pump technology and not the traditional HVAC system. they're much quieter. So we haven't really dug into it yet, but that's what we're looking at.
So basically, the increase in the budget is that extra bucket truck, yeah. That's what,
It's carried over. It's just wasn't spent last go around, so.
Yep.
Yep. I will make that change that Jack caught. Have I said
Not on
Jack
the,
caught?
by the way, not on the electric.
It wasn't on the
Okay?
electric side. Yeah.
On the gas. Electric is fine.
I'm looking and I don't find anything wrong.
So you're gonna prove it with the amendment cited?
Yeah.
We are?
yeah, the
All right.
total has to be updated. I don't think the
Correct.
total is right either.
So we'll update the totals and that now. Yeah.
Okay,
It looked so cheap until that error went in there and now it's all back up to.
Yeah, would you just, please send us, these by email after you, make the
Yeah.
update?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Want a big copy? I can send you a paper, or you just want the email copy?
Emails. For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Email
works.
sent by me.
Yep.
I will make a motion to approve the proposed capital budget for fiscal year 2025.
Second,
all in favor?
Right?
aye.
Okay.
I should have said pending the,
As amended, right?
yeah, as amended, yeah, thank you.
Implemented on the gas.
On the gas side.
On the gas.
On the gas side.
All right, thank you.
410, not bad.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
just be able to-
officially close it out.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Is that it?
That is, you could ask that
I,
thing unattended or
Nothing further from me.
any other matters to discuss? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn meeting.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for staying awake, Cliff.
Now,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You were in the bullpen ready